And after the meeting sometime soon, hopefully this week, Janice can help me set up a SharePoint site that we can post all of our stuff to, and it'll be easy access for everybody, including with the video. Well, there'll be a link to the video because the video will have to be on YouTube. Welcome everyone joining us. It looks like we're straight up at 8 o'clock. And we've got about 50, almost 55 attendees. So I think we have a good, a full agenda day. So I think I'll go ahead and maybe let Oscar say a welcome. And then we will move right on to our first agenda item.
Thank you, Kim. Good morning, everyone.
So
welcome to our third PDQ meeting for this year. Another meeting that we have to do remotely, again with COVID. But I think most of you can see we're now trying to have more hybrid meetings. So we'll try to see if we can have something like that in October for PDQ. So this time around, like today, we are all, I think, attending remotely. I don't think we have anyone in the building. So in October, we'll try to make it hybrid if we can. As you can see, most of the meetings so far are getting to be hybrid. So we'll try to make it hybrid. This is a larger group here. We usually get like up to 90 people. So when we do hybrid, at least we'll allow some to meet in person. And I think some of you this year got a chance to meet in person. For those of you who attended the ACEC ODOT conference, I got to see some of you. We got time to network and talk a little bit. So maybe we'll try to do something like that in October. Fingers crossed. I mean, with the COVID situation changing now, hopefully we get to October and everything will be fine. We can do at least a hybrid meeting where some of us can show up to Salem and meet. We're trying to have similar, we're already having hybrid meetings with the area managers, so we can try with the PDQ. We have a full agenda today. So I'm assuming most of you have already seen the agenda. Very interesting, a list of interesting topics to cover today. Starting with Susie, and some of us will get to meet Erica. Some of you it will be the first time. Some of us have already met Erica, our new assistant director for the Office of Social Equity. And then we get into some of the change management initiatives and a number of changes that are happening so far. Starting with the CET, I know that was one of the discussion we've had so far. It's a hot topic. We're going to talk a little bit about it. We have a focus group meeting coming up next week to address that. So we'll just touch on it a little bit, then get into some of the project management reports and project management training. We had a project management training this year back in May. Completed that, got a lot of feedback from the participants. So we're going to touch on that. Tana is going to, our new member, Tana, is going to give us an update, what played out in some of the results or some of the feedback we got from the participants. So there's a lot on the agenda today. Hopefully we get more feedback from the team here. Before I finish, I would like to take a minute or two to thank all of you. I know we have gone through a number of changes. We get feedback from most of you, if not all of you. Please continue to give us feedback. Speaking of one ODOT, this is what we need. Give us more feedback so that we can all fix what needs to be fixed as one ODOT. So the more feedback you give us, the better, and we appreciate that. So I want to take time to recognize and appreciate all that you do for ODOT and also the feedback you've been giving us, because it helps us to prioritize some of these changes you see. If you look at our agenda today, almost 75% of it is all the changes that have been going on. But most importantly, it's the feedback that you've been giving us to make sure if we're making a change, it's the right change for the agency, not just making a change for the sake of making a change. Now, there are some cases where you may feel like your feedback is not being listened to or we're not hearing you, but we're trying. Please reach out to us. Do not hesitate to reach out to us and continue giving us feedback. If we have to improve, this can be done by all of us. Again, going back to that one ODOT spirit, in the spirit of one ODOT, please continue to give us feedback so that we can improve. There's a lot going on. And with that, I'm going to stop here so that we can proceed with the agenda. I know I can talk, I can go on and on and on, but I'm going to stop here so that we can get back to our agenda and continue with the rest of the topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. And I know our whole team are in agreement with Oscar that we love getting the feedback and we want to keep getting the feedback. And like Oscar said, if you feel like we're not hearing you, keep talking. So with that, I want to move on with the agenda. And first up is the Office of Social Equity around scoping and equity. We have Susie Ashenfelter, and welcome, Susie. And I don't see Shane.
I hope Shane's on.
You're on your own, Susie.
Oh, maybe I'm just, let's see. Oh, there he is. I think he's on.
I was just about to say he's in the Region 1 office if anyone wants to go, hey, Shane.
And I didn't know if Erica was going to be able to join us or not.
No, Erica's not able to join us. So it's just Shane and I, and I recognize some of you that I can see on the screen. So I used to work with Oscar and Kim in Statewide Project Delivery Branch, but I'm now in the Office of Social Equity. So Susie Ashenfelter, I'm in the Office of Social Equity doing program and policy work, making sure that equity is embedded into our programs and our policies, and really working with divisions and different parts of the agency to do that. And so I am happy to be in this group and see you all again. And then I have Shane with me. Shane, are you there?
Yep, barely.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Shane Whittington. Hopefully, if I haven't already met you, there needs to be an opportunity for you to meet, for us to meet. I do the engagement work for the Office of Social Equity and ODOT across the board. I've worked with a lot of different people in my time here, and hopefully I can engage with a lot more of you moving forward. I used to engage with Oscar all the time. Do you remember that, Oscar?
Yes.
I used to meet with Oscar probably once or twice a week. So anyway, with all that being said, I look forward to meeting with you all if I haven't met with you yet, and appreciate you all for allowing us to be a part of this space. It looks like you all have a really long agenda for today. So we want to make sure that we're efficient in our presentation here.
And Kim, we don't have a presentation. We're just talking to y'all. So if you want to, saw that somebody said they can't see the speakers. If you want to close the shared screen, then they can see maybe they want to see our faces. And Shane, I think you're going to start us off.
Yeah, no problem. So you all should have received an email from Justin Burnt, I think. And in that email, he's just addressing like, hey, there's the social equity lens tab in the CET, and on the scoping portion of it, in that email, as the scoping session starts to come to a close, we want to address some of the work that has been completed or not completed, right? Specifically for the social equity lens tab. And we know that we had some guidance that was put out for the CETs during the fall forum. It is on the Office of Social Equity website, some guidance in that space. In addition to that, I was a part of different spaces where David Kim had alluded to some of these different pieces, and started to talk about what the social equity lens is, and then that it needs to be implemented and that it needs to be filled out. So us coming to this conversation is just basically us addressing the implementation of the equity lens and how it has played out over time. And we know that the equity lens questions is a shift for our agency, and any shift we know takes a little bit of time, and the expectation is that that it's filled out so we can get to goal and make any adjustments or provide any guidance if people need that along the way. So with that being said, and the equity lens is new, and it is something that is happening across the board, but it is something that the guidance that has already been put out there, that we can continue to strengthen, and we can continue to work through to embed it in our daily practices, in the work that we do to inform our work so we can make better decisions. And our impact statement that we have, one of our goals is that by 2030, that all projects and programs will prioritize social equity and have it embedded in our planning and risk assessments, in everything that we do. And that begins now, right?
Yeah, so we really just want to make sure that we're taking an opportunity with you all to be able to learn and grow and make adjustments and improve on the equity lens questions and how we're doing scoping, so that we have so that we're able to accomplish what we put out in our SAP, and really what we promised to the communities that we'd be doing around equity. And so you all are the subject matter experts that know how to do this work, know how this should be incorporated, understand what this should look like. And so we just want to make sure that we're engaging with you all to help this be successful in the long term. And we looked at some of the CETs to see how they were being filled out. We noticed that a lot were still like pending, so they hadn't been completed yet, or that some were not complete. And so we're wondering, we wanted to come to you all and discuss what happened, like what questions there are, and really get your input, because as we're at the point now where scoping is wrapping up, and we've heard that some of the programs have already made project selections. And so if there's an opportunity for us to add this information in the social equity tab, we want to make sure we do that, and that our projects are being selected with equity in mind. If I was thinking about or reflecting on, if we miss this mark on this scoping season, our projects aren't going to be impacted by equity for like another 4, 5, 6 years down the road. And so it's a really big deal. And it means us not meeting some of those equity targets that we've set for ourselves. And so we're here to listen to you all, to get feedback, to get input. Shane and I have also put together a survey where you can provide us this input via the survey. We know we don't have a lot of time here today. And so if you feel more comfortable, or if you feel like that format is more applicable, I'll put that link in the chat here. And you can certainly share your feedback with us that way. Or you can just reach out to us. Like Shane and I are totally available. So if any of you call me, if any of you set up a meeting with me, if any of you reach out, I'm going to take the time and talk to you all. So, and I know Shane will too. I'll just put him on the spot like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're under a short time frame. So our assistant director, Erica McAlpine, has made the statement that the social equity lens questions need to be filled out, and they need to be filled out by the end of the scoping cycle, which is upon us, right? So part of that is the fact that we're in this space to make sure that we can get to goal. So how can we help get to goal so we can meet her expectations and you all's management's expectations around this as well? The end. Yeah, we'll take any questions or comments.
We do have Emerald.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Emerald Shirley in Region 4 has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just thinking about moving from scoping to DAP. I just pulled open a CET to remind myself what the questions were. And there's that green section for DAP. And I don't know if that's on the checklist yet, but I need a reminder on everything new for sure. So I think that would be great if, you know, there's something on the DAP checklist to remind us, especially when things are new, until they're habits, like we just forget to do them. And then overall, I just want to say that I'm excited that there was actually something concrete, because we'd heard for a couple of years like we're going to involve social equity in each project, but it was great to finally see something concrete, and I'm sure it will evolve over time as everything does, but it's nice to just see it out there.
Yeah, that's awesome, Emerald. We will definitely work with Oscar and Justin about possibly getting that on the checklist. I appreciate that thought. Any other thoughts?
Oh.
Thoughts, comments? You can put something in the chat too if you don't want to speak up. James? Hi, James.
Hey there. I just want to make the comment that in Region 2, we filled out the tab, but then when it came to project selection, it just felt like there was very little guidance on what we were supposed to actually do with it. And so I think funding programs and regions, even if they did fill it out, it just felt like we didn't know really how it was intended that we use that information. So we went through the effort, but we kind of didn't really know what to do. And so consequently, I think generally that information was not used to influence project selection. And so that is an area that I think needs, even if the regions do fill out the tab, I think that's an area that needs a lot more guidance. Otherwise, we'll have the same problem 4 years from now.
Yep, I appreciate that, James. That is our next step. We do plan on working with the program funding managers, and Erica's plans on working with them directly and learning how the social equity lens tab or questions were applied and how they were considered in the project selection process. And then also looking for best practices around that, right? There's probably some programs that did that well. I'm making an assumption, but really taking the opportunity to learn from the programs that did that well. And so that is the next step for us, James, is to go down that path.
Thanks,
Well,
Susie.
also-
Sorry, Shane, if I could
Yeah,
add
go ahead.
just one more thing.
Absolutely.
This is an issue that I think we've seen in different examples where we roll something out, but we haven't completely figured out all the details of it. And so we spend a lot of time working on parts of it, and we describe it as flying the airplane as we're building it. And I think we're seeing that regions and individuals are starting to get frustrated with that as a way of doing business. And I don't mean to be overly critical, and I think there are times where we have to do that, but we're seeing programs and initiatives one right after another where we've got half of it ready or 3/4 of it ready, but the last details are not ready. We roll it out anyway, and then everybody says, where's the other piece, or where's the guidance on that? We don't know what to do with it. And so it becomes very frustrating for people to make those kinds of efforts and then not have that final piece. And then we end up sometimes redoing work, which frankly, when we're overloaded with projects, that's really hard to do. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that you're making important points here, and that's also why Susie and I have put together this questionnaire that she's placed in the chat, so we can start to write out some of those different pieces. We can start to put together where there are gaps from people's written material. So I know a lot of times we will offer points in this space, but it's also really important to document those pieces as well. So points like that, if anyone else in the group has questions, concerns, comments, opportunities that they want to articulate, please definitely fill out the It's only 3 questions in there, right? So it's pretty short and straight to the point, as Oscar tells me to do with most things, right? Is Shauna in here too? But with that being said, we really just want to get to the heart of this. And that's what I think you're alluding to here, James, is what is the heart of the issue? So it's not the fact that this isn't important, right? But there are some pieces here that are critical that need to be expounded on. And oftentimes we may not know what those things are. We're not on the front lines. We don't understand how the work then plays out or what things need to happen. So that questionnaire that is put into the chat, please fill it out so we can document and see where there are gaps, and also where there may be common things or that we pick up, or trends from people's responses that we get back. But we also didn't put like a deadline or anything on that. I always think about scope, schedule, and budget, right? So the deadline on that, we'd like to get that information back by the end of the week if we could, and we know that you have busy schedules. So by the end of the week, if you could fill out those 3 questions, that would be great.
Yeah, it would be really helpful going into the conversations with the program managers if we have some of your responses and your feedback. So.
Thank you. We have about 4 or 5 more minutes for the topic. Does anyone else? James, your hand up again, or?
Sorry about that, Kim. I took it down.
That's okay. No, that's fine. Just didn't want to ignore your hand. Does anybody have anything else for Shane and Susie?
There was one comment in the chat, Kim, about how what scoping looks like and how equity is applied. And so I think the biggest piece there is really trying to get that information from the program funding managers. And we're happy to share that feedback with y'all, like how they used it and how they intend to use it and how we can improve that. Once we get that information and work with them on that, we're happy to share that with y'all if that's something you want to hear when we, as a follow-up. Because I don't know how they did it.
Right, which is the same thing, and we will likely have them fill out this same exact survey that we've offered to you all as well. So we can do cross comparison of just thinking through these different things. But we will make sure that we revisit and have a conversation with the people that we've been having conversations with, which is the management teams, to make sure that we get back with you if this is something that we need to follow up on. And it sounds like it is.
All right. Well, it was good to see everyone.
One more hand if I see real quick. Justin Burnt. We can't hear you.
Since the email from the scoping program came out and only went to the area managers and scoping coordinators, are you now encouraging the area managers to share with their teams in case they have any further feedback?
I think we lost the first half of your question, Justin. Do you want to just connect with us?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Susie, I think Justin was just recommending back to the area managers to forward the email he sent out on Friday to this group here, because some of them may have missed it or they may have not seen a copy of that email you're talking about before they take this survey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Answer to that question is yes.
I only heard the second half of the question.
Yeah.
And maybe when
Okay.
we reissue the email, we can also attach the Survey Monkey tool that we've created as well. So Oscar,
Good.
would you, or is that something that Justin would send out or something that you would send out?
It was already sent out on Friday last week. It's just up to the area managers to just forward it to this group, to the TPMs.
Gotcha. No problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Susie.
Yep.
Bye. Have a good one.
Have a good rest of the day. Thank you all.
Too. Okay, welcome to Melissa Canfield. Our next agenda topic is kind of an update on what ODOT has been working with ACEC on with shortening the length of time to issue the notice to proceed. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Melissa. Do you want me to put your slideshow up, Melissa?
That would be great, thank you. And if somebody could monitor the chat, because I won't be able to see it. So I'm Melissa Canfield. While she gets that up, I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for ODOT. For those that don't know me, I know there's, certainly new folks probably in the room. So my role is really to oversee all of the procurement activities and responsibilities of the agency in the procurement realm. And so you folks probably work with my team on A&E contracting. We've been working on this project for a few months now to really look at what is contributing to delays between intent to award and notice to proceed of contracts, to see if we can identify areas that we could make improvements. Next slide. So can you move to the next slide, or is it delayed?
I am trying. I lost my, let's just do this. Let's start again real quick.
So I'll tell you what slide I'm on. So I just talked to you about the project itself, and she'll catch up with the slides.
Yeah.
Really, the objective is to identify and roll out quick wins and long-term strategies that ODOT could use to really make this, have things go quicker. And the outcome is to provide both ODOT and the A&E consultants with the knowledge and tools they need to expeditiously move through the period of time between intent to award to notice proceed. And I don't know if John came and kind of gave this presentation in May. I can't remember. But I'm going to move into some of the data analysis work that we've done over the last couple of months to really address what have been the key contributors to delays, and then what we can do about them. So if you could advance 2 more slides, that would be great. The period of time that we're looking at is basically for work order contracts, and you can see on the timeline from intent to award to notice of execution, which is really the notice to proceed is usually tied very closely to the notice of execution when everything has been signed. So we're looking at reducing that time, or contributors that are having it be longer than the timeline we've accounted for. Next slide. And next slide. So this is actually some data analysis we did, and we went back and looked at things that were taking longer than a timeline in 2021, and they may have been completed, but they all took longer than the timeline allowed for. And so we really looked at that data to see what were the key contributors to that time frame, and we actually gave a buffer of 30 days. So if the timeline said this many days, and we gave an additional 30 days before we determined what the contributors were. So it was really longer, even longer than the timeline that we had been given. Next slide. So this is what the data analysis showed us in 2021. Out of 17 projects, negotiations was a key contributor to why it took so long. The next thing was really refining documents, the back and forth, and that could have been sitting it to the consultant and then the project manager working on it, or it could have been the back and forth between OPO, but we saw that that was a key contributor as well. Legal sufficiency, it's really in 2021, yes, we were over the timeline. We usually give them 15 days for work orders, and on average, they were about 3 days over that. So they weren't, I would have really a key contributor, but they did contribute to extra time. And then it took us longer than we expected to get the signatures. We allocate 8 days for collecting the signature, and a lot of the, as you can see, 10 of the projects were 4 days over that 8 days. So those were the main key contributors to why things took so long and why they were exceeded the timelines. Next slide. We also looked at 2022, the stuff that was work in progress, and we are currently updating this because we did it as of February 22nd, but we are actually looking at starting to pull the data between February and now to see if these numbers change a bit. But again, these were things that may not have been executed, but we could see where they were. So if you move to the next slide, you'll be able to see the data. And if you compare this as of 2022 to 2021 data, we actually saw that the timelines are getting longer, or as of February. So DOJ has been taking longer, negotiations have been taking longer, and refining documents have been taking longer. So that was as of February 22nd. I'm hoping that we will see some reduction in time as we look at the data over a longer period of time. But right now, and we have talked to DOJ a bit about their delays as well, we do see it increasing and it taking even longer than it did in 2021. Next slide. So in looking at all of this data, OPO and ACEC has a procurement subcommittee, and they've been looking at ways to look for quick wins to try to improve the processing time and improve the timelines between intent to award, knowing that these are the areas of concern. And so the first thing was really to see how we can get the procurement contract specialists involved earlier in the process. And I know that a lot of folks do take advantage of our consultant requests. In our request process, we have a way to ask for consultant support while you're trying to develop things. Another way to do that during intent to award is to actually have the procurement specialist come and help you with negotiations. They can help build the negotiation strategy for you. They can schedule meetings for you. You know, just really involving them in that process to see if they can help with some of that effort of negotiations. To address refining of documents, again, this is about engaging OPO in the negotiations. Sometimes we could just be sitting there and hearing conversations, and we might be able to help with the refinement of documents better because we understand what those conversations are. Number 3 was really something that the consultant community and ODOT talked about is, does the consultant have to wait for us to schedule the negotiations, or can they go ahead and work with you and get the negotiations scheduled? And so really that's where we're looking at, where the consultants can really say, we need to get the negotiations started and we'd like to do it on these dates. And so that we are moving towards having them being more actively engaged and being able to initiate those negotiations. Those that received the intent to award letter, we already did this. We updated the letter, really setting a time frame for negotiations for 30 days. So the target for completing your negotiations should really be 30 days. And I know there's lots of contributors of why it may take longer, but we really should be trying to hit 30 days for that negotiations to be completed. And if we can do that, we will improve the time to notice to proceed. Number 5 is really about mandating the use of the statement of work standards, and we have implemented that effective July 1st. So folks are starting to use the statement of work template, and I understand there's a process for exception requests that go through Tamara and Donnell's group, but we really encourage folks to use the standard statement of work, and we're mandating it as well, because that's going to help with refinement of documents. If we're using standard statements of work that have been also coordinated with the industry, then nobody's going to be surprised with what the language says, or it's really going to just be about refining what you need for that particular project. And we're not going to be spending a lot of time wordsmithing things. We're going to be saying, this is the task that we need them to do. Here's what the language says. We all understand what that is. And so we shouldn't be spending a ton of time refining the language of the statement of work. And that goes into number 6. Refining the procurement timeline to address inconsistency. So we did notice that we shortened the timeline for work order contracts so that they are to be done quicker than like a normal RFP. And so some of the dates in there and the timeframes we have given are not exactly the same. So we're basically looking at the procurement timeline to make sure that we're giving everyone enough time to do the negotiations, because I think it was like 15 days. And we really need to kind of give you the 30 days that we had originally put when we do a normal RFP. And then the last is to do joint quarterly training for A&E consultants and ODOT. And OPO is doing a lot of work right now in creating trainings for consultants around billing rates, how to establish billing rates. We're looking at what other opportunities we have for joint training. We've gone out and talked about the partial pay. We've done training with the consultants around that area. And then what more can we do to help train the consultants and ODOT to do a better job in these areas? I want to market for a minute that we do have negotiations training that we have scheduled. And if you feel like, you know, negotiations isn't necessarily your strong suit, I would really encourage you to take that training. It was modified to be very specific to ODOT's needs and the type of work that we do. And the trainers are very good trainers. So if this is an area that you feel like you need some more support or training in, please avail yourself of that training. Next slide. I'm just keeping an eye on the time.
Melissa, you have some comments in the chat.
Okay.
Would you like to address them now or wait until the end?
Let me, oh my God, there's a lot of comments.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
Thanks, Tana. I can't see them either.
Let me
No, you're
start.
okay.
Okay.
So
I
Justin,
just want to
think-
make sure we talk about it.
Justin, I think yours is the first one on this subject. So yes, ODOT local projects often take longer to negotiate due to the additional parties involved. That is true, but we don't really differentiate because at the end of the day, the contract is between ODOT and the consultant. So we may need to look at this particular area to see why, or if there are opportunities when we're talking about ODOT and local projects, how we can make improvements in negotiations. I don't know if it's a scheduling issue. I don't know if it's a statement of work issue. We do have statement of work templates for local agency work. I don't know if we're using those, but this may be an area that we have to kind of carve out as its own and take a look at where we might have opportunities for improvement. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Justin.
Agreed, Melissa, and I would love to start having some conversations around this. I've communicated with quite a few of the TPMs and some of the area managers around this issue, and they've expressed either some concerns or some specific problems that we may or may not necessarily be able to address, but at least we should all be informed as to what those are. So I would be more than happy to start scheduling a discussion.
I think part of it has to do with, do they have to take their contracts to their local boards, I think. And sometimes you have to get on their schedules. So I think it's going to be probably an interesting conversation with different local governments having different processes for how they approve contracts.
In this case, we're the contracting agency, so the local agency
Yes.
doesn't sign the contract. So
But do they have to go to their local board?
no,
Not
Okay.
very often. The local agency specific requirements. So since we're working within their jurisdiction, there are often things that we have no template for. We have no template statement of work. And so it always takes additional time in order to work through those details, because now we're adding not just our process, not just our statement of work, but also statement of work pertaining to their specific jurisdiction and facilities.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's good to know. So I'll put this on the list. Because we're all very busy, I'm being very judicious about the process improvement initiatives that OPO takes, because it takes our resource time away from doing procurement work. And so I will put it on the list. I don't know if I'm ready to actively pursue that at this time with you, because we need to do this part, but I will put it on the list. And we have a running list of improvements that we want to make, but we do have to balance that against getting the procurements out the door. So thank you, Justin. And I have made it, and we will make sure we put on our list to engage with you when we're available to do that. Okay, next it says, there was quite a bit from Ken. I would imagine that as we roll out the statement of work template, you are correct. It may take longer. I do believe that as we all get more familiar with the statement of work template and its use, that it will improve the timeline, but it's all very new. So I do think there will be some lag, at least right now, but we'll be monitoring that. So folks need to understand that we're not just doing these process improvements and not looking back and saying, are we getting the results we expected? I'm certainly not going to look at that in July when we just rolled out the statement of work, but we are going to be continuing to look at, if we're making these improvements, are we getting the results we expected? And if we're not, why not? So I agree that I think it might take some time at the beginning, but DOJ is very aware of the templates. And I do think over time it will improve the timelines.
Okay,
as
and
far
I
as-
appreciate that, because our experience has been that between our, OPO, partner and DOJ, there's been a lot of corrective language in the statement that has actually gone slower than some of the ones that we've had. And so if there's going to be a shortening of that timeline, I hope that it holds off until, these things have worked through the system and exemptions in place, and we can actually, realize some of the time savings that's anticipated.
So I think that's really great, Jen. And like I said, I can assure you, we're going to be paying attention to, are we getting the results we expected in the improvements in our timelines? As far as the BOC goes, that's new for me. So I want to take that back to my team, because I'm not sure. You're saying that we, without the template, expanded to take care and address and coincide with the statement of work. I think that's what you're saying.
Melissa?
It's going to take
Yeah,
longer. Yes.
Yeah, instead of negotiating on, say, 20 tasks, now there's a lot of more tasks to negotiate time and effort for, and without that template, it's just more points of negotiation, and it just stands to reason it's just going to take more time to negotiate, either to take them out instead of rolling up. So anyway, that's just trying to work through some of the realities of when there's more paper, more tasks, there's just more effort to negotiate each of those points. So
Danelle, yeah, jump in anytime, because the statement of work is a joint effort between your group and my group. So jump in anytime if I'm misstating something or not sharing it accurately.
You're definitely not misstating anything. But the BOC is like just within a week of being released officially. But if somebody has a statement of work that is in the works and needs to have that, let me know, or Heather Gaona, and we can get you a draft copy of that new BOC template. And also in that template, you have the ability to roll up any of the individual line items. You can expand it down. There's a bunch of functionality that you can do in that. So just let us know if you need a copy of that and we'll get it to you.
I need to jump in. Melissa, I'm sorry. I need to jump in real quick to just do a process time check. We are over on this topic, and the topic that's on at 8:50 is kind of a hard, we need to let Mike in. He's got some schedule issues. So if I could give you about 7 more minutes, Melissa, there's a lot of good comments in the chat, and I'm sure I've got a team member that can help me get those in a format that you could read them. And I'm sorry, the discussion is very good, but I need to manage the agenda. Sorry.
Okay. So a lot of the comments are around the statement of work template, and I've just kind of glanced through them really quickly. So yes, I think if you could get up the comments and we can take a look at them, if there's follow-up, a lot of it is just back and forth discussion about that. And if there are specific questions for people, we need to follow up with them, and I might have to coordinate with Danelle afterwards. So again, what I was telling you is we're going to measure, the results of this work, and we're going to be looking at the impact of the timeline. And if we need to adjust our timelines, we will. But first, we need to roll out the statement of work, and we need to do some of these quick wins to really just see if this really is improving our timeframes for issuing notice to proceed. Ultimately, you know, if we don't get to notice to proceed sooner, then we compress our project schedules to getting them done, and that creates other issues for the consultants as well as for us, and potentially our costs down the road. I do want to take, can I have the next 5 minutes, or do you need me to get off? Hello?
I think you can go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yes, you can go ahead. Sorry. I was muted, obviously.
Okay. Can you just scroll to the next slide? I want to make sure I covered everything. I think I did, but so then the long-term strategies were really around having folks attend the negotiations training and basically we'll continue to look at barriers that may be and solutions that may be contributing to the timeline. So we're always looking at these because I know that time is really important, and getting these contracts in place is very, very important to the agency. So believe me, the time is not lost on anyone in my office about we need to get this done as soon as we can. But remember, we're working with multiple parties, and that can be a challenge at times. So we're going to continue to work in this space with all of you. Real quick, I just want to give you a couple updates. I am working with DOJ to pursue an exemption for A&E contracting for work order contracts up to $500,000. I have submitted a draft request to them. I'm working on going back and forth with them on finalizing that draft. So I'm hoping that we will get that exemption. It has not officially been submitted yet, but I do continue to have those conversations with DOJ about exemptions, and we have received quite a few already. Secondly, the ESB, emerging small business threshold, that rate was raised from 100,000 to 250,000. There's a piece of that work that we need to, I don't know, Justin, yet what the requirements are going to be because it's a draft and they're going to tell me what those requirements will be, but we're really early in the stage, so I don't know. There's a piece of the ESB increase in threshold that we didn't address because we needed a rule, an administrative rule for that. And that's for goods and trade services that are directly related to the highway work that we do and public improvements. That rule is progressing, and we expect to have it in front of the OTC in September, which means we'll be able to expand our work in the goods and trades area of public improvement for the ESB program up to 250,000. Right now, it's still sitting at 150,000. And then we also, I just want to let you know that we did officially remove the pre-qualification fee on the construction side for all contractors. They no longer have to pay a fee to actually be pre-qualified. And that rule, it has been adopted. And while folks, it's only $100. Couple things, that money was being sent to the COVID office. So OPO was just processing the paperwork. And we don't want to have any additional barriers, no matter how little money it is, for any small business to be able to become pre-qualified on the construction side. So that rule has been approved by the OTC on the consent calendar, and it is being processed through the Secretary of State right now. So those were just some things I wanted to update you all on. There's a lot of things that OPO does behind the scenes to help improve things. I don't particularly like to boast all of those things, but I just want you guys to know that we are working really hard, not just in processing your procurements, but looking for ways to make improvements wherever we can for both you folks and for the consultant community. Thank you for your time. I have 1 minute to spare.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I would encourage people, if you've got questions, go ahead, get them in the chat, and we will work to get those in a format that can be shared, and they may, Melissa, like you said, you may pull in Donnell. It just depends on what the question is, but please reach out if you have questions. And next time, I'll make sure we have more time on the agenda. Thanks, Melissa.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. I'm looking for the agenda. Okay, I have just skipped over Jaime and Michelle. I sent them a chat and I hope they're not yelling at me in the chat. But I'm,
Yeah, I just responded. That's absolutely fine. And if we need more time for the CET, I think everybody on this call has actually seen the PDO2 exception template in PDF form. So if we need to skip over me, we can do that.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. I'm gonna turn it over to Mike Kimlinger. He's gonna give an update. The bulletins come out already, the E&O Bulletin, but he's gonna talk about that. So thank you, Mike. Welcome.
Good morning. I think I'll help get us back on time. This won't take very long. I put a link in the chat to the tech bulletin about errors and omissions. It's really an update to one that Kathy Nelson put in place in 2007. It didn't change very many things. The process has had some refinement over the years. The one thing I'm going to have to do now, I've learned that the process over at OPO is turned into a guidelines thing, and they no longer use the terminology Exhibit I, which is what the errors and omission process used to be called. So I'm going to go back and refine the tech bulletin to not say Exhibit I. Other than that, what's in the link here is a refined and updated version of errors and omissions, and we just updated the tech bulletin. So, FYI, nothing big changed. So, any questions? If not, you guys can get right along it, and I think those of you that have had to use it have already been involved in it. So, okay.
Questions for Mike?
Good. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. It looks like Justin Burnt has a question.
Oh, okay.
So, Mike, who is the best contact for someone to look at and investigate whether or not they have an E&O issue?
It depends an awful lot on what the issue is. You're probably going to have to bring in whoever the statewide technical resource is for that. So, if it's an issue having to do with geotech, then you're going to probably want to get a hold of. Right now, it's Kern. Now that Stu Albright is retired, and just talk over what's going on and what do we see. I've done a couple of evaluations for the chief engineer's position in the past around errors and omissions. Should somebody have known, that sort of thing, and it's one of those kind of deals. Justin, you've been involved recently in some. Do you have any other things you'd like to recommend or say to anybody?
So my recommendation, and excuse if there's additional noise, there's a garbage truck passing by. But my recommendation is to, as soon as anyone feels like there's something going wrong, as soon as there's the feeling or the white elephant in the room that nobody can see except for you, that is the time in order to bring it up in a broader discussion. Have a discussion with your PCS with procurement, have a discussion with Zach Cartwright with OPO risk, and then, discuss some of the details, and also discuss it with your manager and the appropriate technical resources Mike had conveyed. That way you at least discuss it with everyone who may need to provide input. You discuss it with everyone who may be able to advise you as to how to move forward. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, so creating a new chapter in an A&E contract administrator manual. Bjorn Miller helped put together and rewrite this update to the E&O. He did that working directly with Steve Cooley just before Steve retired. Between Justin probably and Bjorn, you've got resources who can really help kind of guide any kind of a, a document that points back to this sort of process.
Joe Wolf, you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. So I've had to review a couple of these things from the cost side standpoint, and I put in the chat just Justin was talking about feeling in that odd space. If somehow you can separate all of your internal, external costs and even construction cost off to the side, it really helps the process of analyzing the potential impact of the claim. Otherwise, we're digging through EAs and emails for countless months to piece together a puzzle. But, in construction, I know whenever I was working for ODOT and I always thought I was could be compensated, I created a new, what we call phase code, and I started billing to it. No matter if I was going to get reimbursed for it or not, I started tracking the costs separately. So if you can do that, it's going to help the process.
Joe? There's a comment in the chat from Dan Roberts, more around the local agency projects. And I think, Justin, did you grab that or?
I was just going to say that pertaining to the local agency projects and around financial responsibility, yes, it would be good for us to provide clarification pertaining to that. I think Carrie, Bjorn, and I need to have a side discussion pertaining to where that knowledge and clarification should go, and make sure that Mike or whoever the current state engineer is on board with where that's going to be maintained and documented.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.
I'm sure if you've got any further questions, reach out. We'll get you the answers.
Well, we'll attempt anyway. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good rest of your day, Mike.
Yep, you too. Thanks.
Thanks. Jaime, would you want to go ahead and just give a quick update on what's going on with the CET?
Sure, I can do that, and then Oscar can add in anything as needed. Over the last several months, probably the last 2 months, we've started to look at some of the different guidance and trying to develop some guidance as to when the CET is going to be required. Understanding that when it was rolled out, as many of you have expressed and we've heard at different area managers meetings, the GPM peer group meeting that we have, the state portfolio management team meeting, that there is some shortfalls in terms of the guidance, the use of the CET when it applies. Some of the tools that we do use currently during scoping and up to project initiation and DAP, how some of the record costs are recorded currently, and then the intent of the CET. And I'll be the first to admit that has not been very clear. So we're kind of doing a reset with the CET and look into, well, we have formed some focus groups. We've got our first meeting next week, and then Oscar's group is also scheduled 2 more. And the intent of the focus groups is to go look at and have very specific discussions as to how the TPMs and project delivery teams, RECPs, are using the CET, all the way from scoping all the way to DAP, figure out what tools we do have in place and how we can restructure the CET where we can and where it makes sense to make it more efficient for the project delivery teams. So that's in process right now. And I know it's kind of in a strange, we're at a strange point, I suppose, in that we are asking for some CET so we can review the basis of cost. That's a lot of the important information that Tamara is looking for with the DAP exception request. And I'm not sure if we're going to get into that conversation, but we can. But in general, that's the intent of the focus groups, is just to get a good handle on the use, the purpose, and then the guidance before we put any guidance out there. We have a tech bulletin that's going to be going out, and we also have FAQs that we put out there that we want to make sure align with the use in the regions. Oscar, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just a few comments. One is, in addition to the CET, I know our main intent is to discuss the CET, but during those focus group meetings, we'll be also talking about some of the forms that go with the CET. Like I think one of the items was design narrative. So we'll be discussing that, and also the AASHTO estimation, because they're all related. And what we're hearing from the users is it makes more sense to use the CET in scoping, but after scoping, it doesn't make any sense. So we'll be discussing that to figure out what's the best solution. Again, speaking of one order, so let's fix it. Well, where is the business need? What's the business need? And then how do we fix it? Do we still need to have the CET after scoping? If yes, then why? And if no, then why? We can figure out what's the solution to address the business need. Because again, the key driver is the business need. What is that? Why do we want the CET at DAP? So we're going to get into that. And it won't be just CET. It will be also the other forms that are related to CET and other tools like AASHTO estimation related to CET. There's a discussion about the risk register. We'll get into that before we finalize the bulletin and the guidance that we'll be sending out soon. And like Amy mentioned, I've just scheduled additional meetings. There'll be one more in August and then another one in September. Hopefully we can finish within the next 2 months, and then maybe have an update in October when we meet for our last PDQ for this year, which will be in October, then provide an update on where we are at. Hopefully we can have it finalized. If not, then we'll just provide an update based on what we have at that time. And again, thanks to all those who provided comments and feedback. Like I was saying when we started this meeting, we need more feedback to make sure what we're implementing is actually being effective and helping you rather than adding more work and delays to your process, to the processes. Someone was trying to say something, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Oscar, I just wanted to, Justin, if you still have a question, I just wanted to mention that going through the process of the memo that was sent out in April of 2020 that we've seen, it just wasn't super clear in terms of what the requirement was. There was some discussions as well, really early on when the CET was being developed, that was passed on to the regions, and that AASHTO project estimation was going to take the place, or there was going to be a better tool that was going to be developed. But we just don't have time and don't have the resources to develop a new tool. As one of the things that we're going to be talking with the focus group is how much do we use now in the existing structure of the CET and format versus what would work better. AASHTO project estimation does not have the functions that we're trying to get from the CET, and that's not something that we're going to move towards. We want to use that mostly for cost estimating and trying to get all the regions to be more accurate with some of the different tools within AASHTO project estimation. That's after DAP, of course, and you start to develop some of your estimates. So we'll talk about those items in the focus groups, but really appreciate everybody being patient with it. As I mentioned, it's just the training, the guidance, some of the ideas that we have, just so everybody is aware. Is we want to have some video training on the CET once we get done with the focus groups, some PowerPoints on how to fill it out, what's important. The equity lens will be a part of that, so we'll be working with that group as well, just to make sure we get it at least functional for the project delivery teams. So yeah, all input is definitely welcome, so appreciate that. Justin, did you still have a question?
I was just gonna, you and Oscar covered it pretty well. I was just going to restate, we are seeking feedback, we are seeking input, we are seeking suggestions and recommendations. We will, I say we, I mean PCO, PMO, ODOT in general will be providing the general what the need is. Any feedback and recommendations on how to improve will definitely be taken into consideration.
So that's all we have today on the CET, unless anybody has any other specific questions.
All right. Thank you, Jaime. Does everyone, have you seen the new PDO2 fillable form that Michelle was going to share? I just don't want to skip over her. If anybody's got any questions or comments, please let her know.
And Kim, if you maybe would include it with the meeting notes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if anybody has any questions, please let me know. We've done a test drive on it, and I think this is probably the last group we're going through, correct, Oscar?
Yep.
Before we finally release it.
Yeah.
Okay, so comments more sooner rather than later, and we can get that out to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Next up on our agenda is STIP amendment patterns and issues. I invited Amanda Sandberg to come. She'd had a conversation with one of the area managers, and the area manager suggested that she come to PDQ maybe and just share and get some feedback. And I don't know if she's joined us yet. Amanda, are you with us? Look like she is in the.
I'm here.
There you are. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Welcome.
Well, yeah, thank you. So as Kim just said, I had a conversation recently with Chris Hunter about some patterns I'm seeing in STIP amendments, and it's not patterns in Region 3 or 4 or 1. It's patterns statewide that I'm sure I've talked to all of you at least once on a STIP amendment that, oh my gosh, PS&E is due on Friday. Can you get this through right now? Right? So I'm seeing some smirks. So I know you guys are feeling this. I know that you know that your projects have been some of those issues. So I kind of wanted to talk about some patterns that I'm seeing and kind of make some suggestions to you maybe to help both of us be a little bit more efficient in project updates. So the first thing that I do notice is it looks like projects are not getting reviewed in the STIP at multiple points during the evolution of your project. So say you have a design contract. Are you looking at your STIP location mile points when you're telling your designers to design this project from point A to point B? Is that being looked at? I'm guessing no, because we're getting to the PS&E package and our mile points don't match the package that your designers have designed, right? So are you reviewing the mile points? Are you reviewing the project name when you have contracts? Are you reviewing the project name at DAP? Are you at final plans? Are you also reviewing your budget at many points during the project? Are you checking your budget against other budgets that have gone recently? Curb ramps are going up in price. Are you checking out your budgets for curb ramps when one of your project goes over bid in the area? But mostly I've seen patterns of project locations not being reviewed until the last possible minute when they go, Michelle's not going to accept my package. I need to have Tana or I need to have my STIP coordinator enter an amendment right now. And Amanda has to prove it right now or they're not going to accept my package and we cannot delay this project. It's making the STIP coordinators the pinch point. It's making your STIP coordinators have to drop everything that they're doing. It's making me having to drop everything that I'm doing, working on other processes in order to get that one project through. It's exhausting at times for STIP coordinators, I have to tell you. And at some point, if everybody is having these pinch points or these urgent amendments, none of them are going to get processed if everybody has an urgent need. So that's kind of what I talked to Chris about. Hi, Emerald.
Hey, I have a tip for the TPMs too on the mile points. I think this is a good opportunity because I recently had a project that went to PS&E and my mile points were off. And we actually have it built into our schedule in Region 4 for each milestone to check. And I did, but the milestone tracker doesn't put them in order. So TPMs, RACPs, just like, I was looking at the first line and the last line and checking that. Turns out my end mile point was in the middle of like a 6-line list. So just like a tip to TPMs, RACPs, if you want to avoid emailing Amanda 2 weeks before PS&E, asking her to change something, like go ahead and look at each line. Don't just assume your mile points are in order like I did.
Yeah, Amanda, to follow on with Emerald's comment, that mile point tracker, when we get into our ADA projects, I don't know how someone from the public even understands where our project's at because it's so convoluted. And it's not very user friendly and frankly, I just dumped that on Jane because I didn't want to deal with that. But one of the problems that I find is we're probably seeing more of these kinds of issues because back in the day, we just kind of designed our project and, we got it out the door and we were able to do a pretty good quality check. But now with a lot of our processes in place, we're worried about managing process and not projects. And so these are the types of errors that are popping up because people, have divided, interest in their time and aren't able to really do a good job of project management anymore. And so I think that's a trend that I've noticed myself. The small things are now slipping through the cracks because we're focused on different things. The other thing is in the name of perfection, trying to chase our dollars. I mean, we're getting estimates right up until, because we're checking them so often, we're getting them right before PS&E, and that's kind of a challenge, to process a STIP amendment right up to PS&E, and then to process it again after bid lead. So I think one of the solutions I'm looking at is just drawing a line at 2 months out and just saying whatever that number is, I don't care if it's accurate or not, but that's just the number we're going to go to bid with. And I don't really care what the estimates are after that because we're just gonna have to fix it again after we go to bid anyhow. So that kind of takes the time frame off. I know it's not right, but that would, reduce that time crunch, going in there. So we're gonna stop trying to be accurate maybe 2 months out from PS&E. So I don't know if that works, from your standpoint.
I can't speak to that process. It's not the budget shifting that's causing some heartburn. It's the last minute project name changes, last minute project location reviews that's causing some heartburn. Adding scope the week before PS&E is due, even though the bid package includes that scope, it's not kind for your STIP coordinator to have to pivot at that last minute and process a full amendment and then feel like the world is on our shoulders, because if we don't, like literally every time I hear this, if we don't approve this, we will lose our bid let date and we lose an in-water work window, or something like that. And that's not kind for your STIP coordinators. I mean, we do a lot of work, we shovel a lot of poo, and to put all of the weight on making bid let dates on your STIP coordinators. I mean, it's great if you think we're heroes, and we can be heroes. We can wear capes, and we do wear capes, but sometimes our capes get holes in them because we're flying too much. So, let's not rely on our STIP coordinators to save project delivery all the time.
Well, we're not just picking on our STIP coordinators, we're beating on our recs to get clearances and everybody else at the last minute too. So
I can't speak to that process. I'm just STIP coordinators are one deep often, and it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard.
Well, Amanda, one thing that I've been talking to Jane about, is, I really appreciate having you come to PDQ. But yeah, and I think, as we get rule changes and process changes on the programming side of the business, sometimes that feels like a game of telegraph. If we're able to get regular updates, at the TPM meetings or the area manager meetings, I think that'll help us be successful in getting the programming staff what they need. you know, and so it's more of an upfront instead of an after the fact, you know, kind of a deal. And because we're all trying to row the canoe the same direction. And if we know the direction you're going ahead of time, that's just, you know, going to be super helpful. So I'm glad you're here today and sharing that, you know, concern. That gives us something that we can kind of work on and keep in the back of our mind, you know, amongst the other things that we're trying to worry about as we get to PS&E and maybe reduce the stress on our STIP coordinator, you know, going forward.
David, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick update as it relates to STIP amendments and PS&E bid opening award. I know during that time, it is a lot of stress. We have a meeting scheduled, we being myself, OPO, PCO, and Jeff Flowers' team, to talk about the point that Ken raised earlier about you have an estimate and you need to do a STIP amendment or not at PS&E. And then when bids opened, we need to do a STIP amendment or not. There's been some confusion that has resulted in OPO issuing bid extensions of contractors, and that's problematic right now with contractors saying, you know, I can't hold my prices for another 30 days. So we're getting some clarity there. Some guidance will come out. That meeting is scheduled for August 10th. So after that meeting, we'll provide guidance to the area managers, TPMs, and RECPs about here's when you have to do a STIP amendment in order for your PS&E package to be accepted, and here's when we'll let it get through, and then what happens after. So if you have a bid that comes in over $500,000 or $2 million, what are the steps so we don't delay the process? So we've had some challenges over the last 6 months with bids coming in over or estimates coming over, so we want to provide some clarity. So just know that that's taking place early August, and we'll get some guidance out. Thank you.
Sorry, there's some comments in the chat that I was just reviewing. And Grant, I missed this comment you had, I think it was a while ago, and I may even be for the previous agenda item. I just want to make sure, is it for Jaime? And I'll make sure that gives in our questions for Jaime. Grant, have a discussion included with the tech centers for the estimates. I'm going to go with Jaime. Sorry. Chris made a comment. We also need to make sure that Amanda and her folks are pulled into some of these process changes, as processes often affect the STIP and require amendments. Good comment. And then Dan Roberts, ER projects present some challenges within the system that might be handled a little differently or different to help on some of the small number of projects, but we had these issues and need for quick response to late changes. And then Chris made a good point. We try to keep the ER projects should avoid the STIP as much as possible.
Right, except permanent repairs. Those have to be in the STIP, but all other ER projects should not be in the STIP, temporary.
We wonder why our business is so confusing, though, because we always have a caveat, you know, except for permanent repairs. So
some of the hard piece about that is some of the initial temporary repairs do include permanent fixes, which is allowed and still isn't required to be into the STIP. So there's a balance there on trying to decipher that, but really work hard with your federal representatives to keep it out of the STIP.
Thank you. Grant, you have your hand up?
I was just going to echo what Chris said. Not all projects that are in permanent repairs go through the STIP, mostly due to timelines. Like if we've got emergencies that are not emergencies, but permanent repairs that need to be done this year, for example, to prevent flood damage from next year. So there's certain examples, and Federal Highways usually works with us on those.
Thank you. Anything else? You want to talk to Amanda about? Sorry, there's something in the chat. It's hard to watch the chat and who's raising their hands. This is fun. Okay, so it looks like we covered everything we needed to cover. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for coming. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. And with that, we can move forward to our next topic, which is our Transportation Project Management Training Update. Welcome, Tana. Tana's here taking or filling in from Diane Child's retirement. Yay! And
thanks, Kim.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to you. Are you going to run your PowerPoint or do you want me to?
Either way is fine. What would you like? You had me send it to you, so either way.
If you could run it, it would be great. I just want to, I have you guys send it to me just so I can share it with the notes.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You got it. I'm sorry. I had it really handy.
I got it.
Okay.
No worries. No worries at all. I'm just pulling it up. No problem.
Okay.
No problem. All right. Slideshow. Welcome to my portion of PDQ. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
I don't hear like laughter and joy yet, so I can't tell if you're like really there. So just want to make sure. Okay, there it is. Thank you. Perfect. All right. I am Tana Libby Hewlett, and I am the new Diane Child. You're welcome. All right. I would like to take you through where we have been, what we are doing, where we are going, and what you have asked for. First of all, I would like to thank all of our speakers that came to speak for the second simulation. If you attended the second simulation, can you raise your hand in the meeting right now? It's the button under reactions. There's a smiley face with like a hand next to it like this. It looks like this. Excellent. Just like this.
Yeah.
Good job. I see it. There's like, I see some. Yes, the number keeps growing. It's great. So six people came. Excellent. You can put your hands down now. I would like to thank all of these people who came and did speaking for us. I see a couple of them in the audience right now. Bill, I see you right here. I know Emerald's done speaking as well, but I don't think Emerald was on this one, but she was in the first one, I believe. So when we have the simulations, we have experts of you come and speak to all of the rest of you, because that's what we're all about, is sharing the knowledge. It's not about me coming with my vast experience, which is great and deep and many, and then giving it to you. It's about you helping each other. And really, we're just facilitators. So what you're going to experience with me in this role is reaching out to you to mine your brain for all of your expertise, and then being able to share that amongst the group. So thank you for these experts coming for the last simulation. I want to share, these are the results of the survey that Diane got. You'll see across the bottom, these were the elements that were being surveyed, and then out of 5, the results across the top. And then on the next slide, you'll see the next things that were surveyed. It sounds like everybody really enjoyed the second simulation. We're planning on having more simulations in the future to go through and talk about how a project really goes through the phases. I have reached out to several of you since I've been in this role to see how you enjoyed the simulation, what you thought of it. And the feedback I was getting was that simulations were really for people who hadn't done projects before, so they could see how they worked at ODOT. And from what we were wanting to do with this simulation, it was really to kind of expand experience and create ways that we could network amongst ourselves as well. So for this next simulation we have coming at some point in the future, we're going to really work on those elements as well. So if you think in your vast experience of ways that we could do that better, I would really love to hear from you. As we keep going through, Diane put together some of the feedback for future simulations. As you're reading through these, I'm going to send out this PowerPoint as well with the notes for PDQ. As you're reading through these bits of feedback that we got, I would really like you to think, wow, they totally missed the mark. That's not at all what I think. And I want you to tell me the right way, because I know that's what you're thinking right now. Or if you think, that's exactly what I think, I would also like you to tell me that, because I like knowing what you think. In the future, these are the topics that the people from the second simulation thought that we should move forward and use. We have several different opportunities to share topics. One of those opportunities is through simulation. Another one is through the 1 hour, 1 topic. My next slide. I would like to send a special thank you to Brian Strasser, who was my most recent speaker for 1 hour, 1 topic. We're going to take some of the suggestions that we had from the simulation and make those into future episodes, if you will. I'll also be sending out the link to the 1 hour, 1 topic videos. So if you missed this one, you can still watch the video from it, and you can tune in the future to see the ones that we have coming up. If you are thinking, you know, I'm really good at something and I wish people would gather around and listen to me talk about it, this is a perfect opportunity for you to share that information as well. So if you have that burning desire, like Justin does, right, to speak up and talk about the things that you know, this is a way that you can do that. Reach out to me. Tell me what those things are. When we think about where we are going, we have several things coming up. Onboarding training. So remember when you started at ODOT as a project leader, whether you're a TPM or RECP, and you were like, oh, how do we do project leading at ODOT? Where do I even start? We don't really have a statewide onboarding plan. That is what I'm working on. I am gathering together a team of intrepid project leaders who will help me put this together. If that's you, let me know. We also have a mentorship project in the works. We are coming out with project development bulletins, which are like ops notices, but slightly different. And we have our change management process, which you'll hear about later. The two biggest things that are coming are that onboarding plan and the mentorship plan. So in our onboarding process, we are going to take current process documentation from each of the 5 regions and see how everyone's doing it great. Because everyone has those little bits of wisdom in their regions, we're going to combine those best practices into a statewide jewel that we can share with everyone. So I really need those amazing people from each region to be able to get together and take this onboarding thing through the process. I need those volunteers. And then mentorship. We are going to set up an amazing mentorship program in which we match up RECPs that know everything about being an RECP, or at least like a lot, and then match them with new RECPs. We're going to take experienced TPMs and match them up with new TPMs who want to share their knowledge and then go through those things that are in your position description. So that say you should be able to talk to people and be nice to them. Great. How do we do that together? How do we talk to people and be nice to them about a project together? And then we're going to go through those processes together and vet each one of them. how does this really look as a TPM? How does this really look as an RECP? We're going to get stakeholder input, and I need those volunteers as well. The things that we have heard you have asked for are representation and input. To give those things, we have created the Change Advisory Board. You're going to hear more about that later. You have said that you want to give feedback, that you want to have your comments heard. We are now including links in every document that we send out for feedback. You may have noticed this already. You may have not. That's okay. Hopefully you'll see it in the future. We are now offering change management training because you have said that you want that. We are providing it. Look for links to it in the PDQ notes that are coming out. We are also going to have DAS trainers come in and give that training to us personally. We already have links to it in Workday. And then if there are things that I have missed, which happens, that totally will happen, I want you to tell me more because I'm listening. So there will be a link in a survey that comes with all of these notes. That was a ton of stuff, and I said it kind of fast. So if you have any questions, you can use the smiley face with the hand like this, and you can push it, and then you can ask your question.
Yeah, Ken had a good comment in the chat.
Okay.
That he, one topic that he'd like to see in the next level of project manager training is work on the soft skills of like public engagement, teams management, and problem resolution, which is a
And
pretty
that
good.
is great.
Yeah. So Tana, that's something that's, we've all learned how to push buttons and pull levers and mark check boxes, but really a skilled, TPM or RECP is going to be somebody who knows how to work the room, knows how to solve problems, knows how to anticipate things and kind of get ahead of it. And that's kind of the next level of training that I think really puts the polish. And so I think the foundational work that Diane has started is excellent. And, I'm thinking, the next step is, how do we, goose this up a little bit and, provide that next level for folks that are ready for that. So
I love it. That's a great idea. Soft skills are where it's at, right? Because this is with people. I love it.
Yep.
Thanks for adding that in, Ken.
Anybody have anything else?
I just wanted to make a comment. I mean, again, thank you, Ken, for your comment. This is actually something that we've been discussing, and one of the items, speaking of problem solving, is the training on change management. I think this was requested, since last year. Kudos to Emirate. She has been reminding us, hey, we need that training. So we're at a point where we're coordinating with the Office of Organizational Excellence to just offer that training. At some point, reach out to Tana and we'll be sending out communication on when that training is available. It's already available in Workday. So for those of you who already have time right now, you can go ahead and go through that training. So we'll be adding additional trainings, not necessarily specific to just project delivery, but the soft skills like what Ken is suggesting. That was a good suggestion, actually. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks for the time, Kim.
Thank you, Tana. It looks like you gained us a little bit of time. Thank you. David, Kim has been able to join us. She wasn't able to join us first thing this morning, but we did see him a couple minutes ago, but he is up next on the agenda to give us some updates around project delivery. So welcome, David, Kim.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I think what I'll do this morning is proceed to share my slide deck that I shared with ACEC last Friday morning. What I'm going to do is strive to get those slides out to the area managers and PDQ so that you have an idea of what information is being shared, because I've heard that there's lots of great information here that we're sharing with our externals, but not necessarily sharing internally. So I just have quite a few slides to go through, but let's go ahead and launch. So again, this will be a rehash for those that attended ACEC. But I'll get some ODOT updates, lots of transitions happening that you may or may not be well aware of. Update on the full service price agreement, which a lot of you will be using, and then grant writing support for IIJA and the process. So we received 42 project delivery positions out of, I think, 70 plus positions that the agency got through the e-board. This is for IIJA. We still have another 30 plus positions in project delivery that we will be requesting as kind of phase 2 as part of our POPs package going before the full legislature next year. The list of the 42 will be shared here shortly. It's been finalized. Since we're halfway through the biennium, not all the positions were funded for the remainder of the biennium. Some were funded July 1st, others were funded December or January. So there's going to be a metering of positions, and we'll get the information out to the area managers to share with their teams, as well as tech center managers and region managers. Pretty significant ADA recalibration effort underway now. Appreciate the work of the regions in helping us meet the terms of the settlement agreement. There's been a lot of work related to getting feedback and input from our consultants, from our contractors, from the regions. So Mike Kimlinger as the interim chief engineer, Tony Snyder, Tova Peltz, Tamara Clark, and several others are working to see how we can have some quick wins to streamline processes, whether it be right-of-way or environmental, or improving inspection processes and training. So more to come on that front. There is an effort underway by ODOT internal audits to take a look at consultant oversight. The scope of that audit has not been determined yet. Jim Fleck with internal audits has been assigned to work on this review. A survey will be sent out, so many of you that work on consultant projects will be getting a copy of the survey. Basically, it'll be asking questions of what does ODOT do well and what are areas for improvement as it relates to A&E consultant contract administration. That survey will also be sent out to our ACEC partners. Based on the results of that survey, ODOT internal audits will then make an assessment of what areas should they take a look at for opportunities to improve or strengthen our consultant oversight piece. Another big effort that's underway, it's still kind of in the shaping phase, is this community workforce agreement. For those of you that watched the commission meeting last Thursday, lots of robust discussions. As we continue to develop the program, there will come a point where we will do robust outreach and training and informing of agency staff of what this means. Less impact on the design side, a lot of impact on the construction side. Bottom line, what a community workforce agreement is a project labor agreement, a pre-hire agreement between the contractors and the labor unions. And so we're working through that effort now. Think of it as like a TERA or DBE, where we're adding contract requirements of our contractors. The end goal of a community workforce agreement is to expand the pipeline of construction workers in the transportation industry, as well as provide a qualified and skilled labor pool. We know that there are shortages across all industries today, and we want to be proactive with transportation projects. This is just a snapshot of our racetrack and the volume of work we have on the ODOT state system. So it doesn't include non-certified local agency projects. These are just ODOT projects. This is something that is shared with our commission quarterly. It just gives you an idea of where we are in terms of workloads. And again, just want to thank the TPMs and RECPs. We do have a pretty heavy workload. Got some big projects coming up going to bid this fall. And I know that our team stands ready to support getting those projects out the door. So some key staff transitions. Bonnie Cook, who was the executive support for the chief engineer, has left ODOT. She was instrumental in a lot of the ACEC industry meetings and past conferences. And then for those of you that have not heard, Chris Bucher has also left ODOT. He was the interim state construction materials engineer. I have Larry Ilg, who is now interim for the construction materials engineer position. Chris has gone on to start a small family business that's not transportation related. In terms of appointments, 2 appointments that came out this week. Region 2, we have Anna Henson and Vidal Francis as new area managers. Congratulations to them. I think all of you may have met Erica this morning as a new Office of Social Equity Assistant Director. Got Galen McGill that's taken Lucy Moore's place. Jim Collins, Environmental Manager out of Region 3, is now State Cultural Resource and NEPA Manager. He's backfilling for John Rash, who's now the State Environmental Manager. Tirsa Frazier was a Program Manager for ProjectWise. She's now, or staff for the ProjectWise program. She's now the Program Manager for ProjectWise. And then Carolyn Sullivan is our new Chief Administrative Officer, overseeing facilities, HR, data, IS, and procurement. Some other announcements. Keith Lynch is the new FHWA Oregon Division Administrator, permanent. And Emily Klein, some of you may know Emily as the Division Environmental Program Manager. She's moved on to Headquarters National Environmental. And Mike Morrow is backfilling for Emily until that position gets filled. Key vacancies, we still have a lot of vacancies we're navigating through. My understanding is within ODOT, we have over 400 vacancies, and then we're going to have another 70 come online. It's been challenging. It's averaging 90 to 120 days to fill positions, just with process and the backlogs. But chief engineer position has closed, and so I would expect that interviews should be taking place in the next few weeks. State bridge engineer has also closed. I suspect interviews will take place here soon. Well, it hasn't closed yet, but will be closing. And then a number of engineering technical disciplines within ETSB, the Engineering Technical Services branch. Mike Kimlinger is working to get those positions filled. Once the chief engineer position has been filled, I know that Mac will be moving on to fill 3 other direct report positions, the Region 3 manager position, the Region 5 manager position, and D&O deputy. So the hope is probably to get those filled before the end of the year. And then we have the state construction and materials engineer. That was Joe Squire. That position is now on the street. And then the construction contract administration engineer, Chris Bucher's position, that we hope to get into HR before the end of the month. Full service price agreement. So the current price agreement, 5 years, $300 million, is set to expire in September. The RFP for the next round, which is $600 million, 5 years, closed on June 3rd. ODOT received 36 proposals. 20 have submitted for consideration for Tier B. We think there'll probably be about a dozen that will fall in the Tier B range, so the bigger contracts, and then the remainder will fall within the Tier A. Evaluations are underway now. OPO hopes to have those finalized by the end of the month, and then notification going out to the firms early August, and then we'll turn this price agreement on hopefully before September. IIJA federal grant writing and coordination. So an internal IIJA grant committee has been formed. They had their first meeting on Friday. This team will assess all the different potential IIJA grants that are posted through the Notice of Funding Opportunity, NOFOs. ODOT certainly will be applying for a lot of these grants. What we did is we conducted a request for qualifications with ACEC industry for grant writing and providing support services. It could be scoping, but with a lot of these grant applications, we're looking at scope, schedule, and budget. 16 firms submitted their qualifications, and ODOT will be using this as a shortlist to go with a 3-quote process. So ODOT has a small purchase procurement process that we can use. What we'll do is once a grant sponsor has been identified, so let's say we have a culvert project or a wildlife crossing project that we want to pursue a grant for. We'll identify a sponsor. It could be somebody in the region. It could be a program manager. We'll then assign it to an agency project manager to say, okay, start working on that grant application. So the lead has been assigned. The lead will then assess whether we need consultant services. And if so, then what do you do? Through the small purchase procurement, you could just get 3 quotes, but where do you start? So this is where we've engaged OPO, and we've actually come up with a list of the 16 firms. They have provided their qualifications. They've also identified their areas of interest or expertise. I think there's like 3 or 4 firms that said they do wildlife crossings or have past experience. So rather than just starting from a clean slate and who do I call, you can look at this roster and then select those 4 firms that you're going to get quotes from. Take a look at the information that they've already provided based on their qualifications. And then it would basically just be an email to those 3 or 4 firms with some clarifying questions, and you pick a firm. So this gives the value of agency project managers to work off an existing roster where the consultants have formed teams, but it also gives benefit to the consultant firms of not having to submit every time if they're going after these potential services that ODOT is needing. And then we'll issue notice to proceed once the firm has been selected. One issue that we have, though, is this is a general timeline. The legal sufficiency piece may get triggered. I think if it's over $150,000, I wouldn't suspect that a lot of these contracts would be over $150,000. But from the time the grant application period opens to when the deadline is, it's about, I'm hearing 5 to 8 weeks. And that's about as much time as it takes for us to get a consultant on board. So what we're thinking is the NOFOs get published, we'll have an idea. And once we know that we want to pursue a grant, we'll go ahead and start the process before the grant application period opens. So once the application period opens or shortly before that, we can issue notice to proceed instead of, so make it much more linear than concurrent. And that way we give our project teams and consultants time to put that grant application together. We want to make it clear that the 16 firms are not guaranteed work. It's just a roster for agency project managers to get quotes from. And so that is my update. Any questions?
Donnell did have a quick comment in the chat, just that the audit survey that David mentioned is going out in the email today, and responses are due by August 3rd, so please respond to the survey. And then Emerald Shirley has her hand up.
David, do we have any clarification on the long-term funding for those 40+ positions that are being added because of IIJA?
Yeah, so what we'll likely do is, so we got budget. Well, I wouldn't say we got budget. We got approval for the 42. So when we go through the budget exercise for the next biennium, ODOT's going to have to account for funding of those positions. I can say I just had a check-in with Travis Brower yesterday. Our budget is not looking good. And last week we had a meeting, we being Mac and his direct reports, and each region branch went through our position management plans, talking about repurposing positions, abolishing positions, upclassing positions. And the challenge is, priorities are subjective, right? Priorities are based on our own world. And the area where I have the most angst right now is maintenance. Galen McGill's like, we don't have budget. We're actually at a place where we might have to lay people off or abolish positions because we just don't have any maintenance budget. So there's certainly some challenges ahead. Travis mentioned to me yesterday that we're probably going to be taking more cuts next biennium because the revenues just aren't there. And now with high gas prices, people are driving less, and so less consumption. The public doesn't understand that with gas prices going up, it actually hurts ODOT. People think, oh, you get more money. It's like, no, that doesn't come to ODOT. So and more fuel efficient vehicles and more electric vehicles. There's some challenges that lie ahead. But yeah, the budget would basically just come out of ODOT's budget, and we just have to budget it through our budget making process for the next biennium. And then same thing with those POPs positions. And a lot of these positions in the POPs package and the 30 plus outside of project delivery are really state funded. DMV positions, HR positions, procurement positions, they're not project charging. And so there's some angst there. I think it might be good at a future PDQ meeting to have a Travis Brower or our economist come and just do a state of ODOT's budget and give us some insight as to how this is impacting STIP delivery and how it's impacting positions. That might be helpful. I know they oftentimes do that at like the ACEC or AGC conferences, but maybe having one that's more internal and having conversations. I think they're open to ideas for how we can try to leverage more federal funds. Travis mentioned that we got word that workforce development is something that is eligible for federal reimbursement. And so looking at leadership programs and all the internal trainings that we do and using federal funds instead of state funds for that. But we're in a bit of a pickle, and so but yeah, the budget basically comes out of ODOT's budget, and we just gotta move money around to keep those positions.
David, this is Kim, and I'm supposed to be just facilitator, but I have a question as an employee. We've been having the immediate budget conversation for over a year. Of course, we all gathered in our units and how could we save money. Doing that, though, does not give us a sustainable revenue source. And I don't know enough about tolling, but I don't believe tolling is going to give us a fully funded revenue source either. And so it's kind of scary. Do you have, I mean, where's the money going to come from?
Yeah, on the revenue side, you know, and I'm thinking more, it would be good for Travis to come because Travis and I did talk yesterday about road usage charging, and there's going to be a legislative concept for the legislature to consider how do we implement VMT. Tolling is going to be a big deal for ODOT. It will actually generate revenue. However, we have Rose Quarter, we have Interstate Bridge, we have I-205 as big projects that need funding. And then the big one, ADA, we're looking at between $500 million to $750 million. And I was talking to Travis about that yesterday, saying, where are we going to get the money, Travis, for that? And we need money like yesterday. And he said that he had a meeting with Jeff Flowers, our economist, and others, and we may be looking at issuing Garvey bonds and borrowing from our future federal funding allocations to pay for ADA today. But there's a lot of needs and liabilities, and tolling, he said, is a big deal for ODOT. It'll help out ODOT a lot, but there's a lot of pressures right now. I-205 Phase 2 is unfunded. Rose Quarter is unfunded, and there's and those projects are moving forward. So more to come. So again, I would recommend let's get Travis to come to talk about revenues, budget, and some longer term plans, because he was mentioning something about the STIP cycle beyond the 2730, where we'll start taking a hit because of if we do Garvey bonds. ADA and right now the ADA conversation is only on curb ramps. We have the next phase of pedestrian push buttons, which may be just as much because some of those might require intersection improvements, and so it's a big deal. And so but I think that it would be good to just plant that seed with Travis, saying we're interested in revenues, in expenditures, the state of ODOT's budget, and what steps can we do on the project management, project delivery side to support efforts. You know, the facilities piece you know, we're realizing some savings on the modern work environment facilities piece. Here at the TLC, I got Oregon State Fire Marshal moving in next month. They're taking about 25 cubes and a couple of offices, and by the end of the year, they're like, can we take half your building? And that may be a possibility based on the number of staff I see in this building. Normally we have about 200 people. We probably only have 30 these days, but want to know till at the end of the year, because you know there's still a lot of challenges out there, so to speak. So we'll know by the end of the year if we're not seeing the numbers, then maybe I will just say take up half the building, and we'll find other means to address office needs, if it comes to that.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything else for David?
I just want to say thank you. I know we're going through a lot of challenges. Workforce challenges is big. Lots of leadership transition and changes. Certainly the employee engagement survey, we're seeing some. I'm hopeful that we're seeing some better engagement. We've seen actions from Director Strickler with those meetings. I would say hang in there. I'm hopeful by the end of the year we will maybe get a little more stability. But at the end of the day, you know, when I think about ODOT and STIP, that's our bread and butter. You know, we have a lot of credibility with the legislature, our externals, and it's all because of the great work that our project managers do in getting projects out, meeting our federal funding obligation, getting redistribution, and there's high expectations. And you know, if you can also get Mac to come to one of these meetings, it'd be good for Mac to share his slide deck and the testimony he provided on the progress we've made on House Bill 2017 and the earmarks. It's amazing the progress we've made as an agency, even through the challenges and adversity that we've faced. But to Robert's point, it does take a team, and this is a very powerful team. Lots of competency, bench strength, and we want to build off of that. So it's exciting to see the investments we're going to start making in training. I'm advocating for relaunching TLA. We've seen tremendous gains and benefits. A lot of our future leaders have gone through that program, and we're a place where I think as we continue to invest in our workforce, that we'll see huge benefits and gains from that. So again, thanks everybody.
Thank you. So we're a couple minutes early for break, so let's go take a break and we'll start back up right at 10:15. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everybody had a good break. And I'm going to turn it over to Haley Roehrig for the next agenda item, which is an update on the project management reports. Go ahead, Haley, thanks.
Thanks, Kim. So I wanted to start with this. This is an email that I sent out from our project management office shared box last week. I want to say last week. Oh no, it was Monday this week. I was off most of yesterday, so I had like a little bit of a weekend already. So anyway, this is the new format that I'm going to be using to send out project management reports updates through. In the past, Ken started sending out this report update email that was basically just like the same information that's in this, but more static, and you would have to forward the email for anybody to get that information. So now we're posting it in a few different places on our SharePoint site. So I basically was trying to make the information a little bit more accessible by, one, I'm still planning to send out this email to those same people, and I think everybody that's on this call probably received it through one of the lists that I sent it to. And if you didn't but would like to, then just send me an email or a Teams message and I can add you to my list. But so this is what it looked like. It has a few different news topics in it. A regular project delivery reports update, a project delivery report highlight, a notification about a SharePoint list that I'll talk about in a moment, and a update about just the overall process of project delivery curated reports, which was part of the data and reporting task force recommendations from 2020, I think is when they were finally implemented. So first of all, each of these items in the email are clickable to go directly to the link for the news. I also included the link to our project management office SharePoint site, so they're on here, which if you're not familiar with our, this is actually my specific page for my program. But if you're not familiar with our project management office site, it has a section for each of our programs. So overall transportation project management, Justin's program for non-certified local agency, Justin's scoping program, my project delivery performance measurement site, and the communications and website. And then down below is where all of our news gets rolled up. So you can see that the last 4 things were the ones that I included in that email. And again, these topics are also clickable through the email. So I'm not going to get super in depth about the updated ones. Basically for the EA end date report, it didn't have the timeliness of when we were refreshing, and it just had a placeholder on it. So super minor change there. The project delivery dashboard, right after we launched it, Chris Hunter pointed out that a project that he knew that they did a ton of work sharing for Region 1 wasn't being reflected correctly. So we changed the way that that's coded, and now it's looking good. So if you were having any issues with the work sharing page on the project delivery dashboard, it should be corrected now. And then these 2 reports are new, but they're just rewritten versions of older reports. Previously, these were in the SSRS format, which is the one that basically just looks like a big spreadsheet online. Now they're Power BI reports, so they load much faster. So this is the new STIP outsourcing forecast report. Same exact information that was on the previous one, but it's a little more dynamic. You can look at specific outsourcing just for your area. I keep my, so the filters will stay with you if you close the report. So if you're seeing that the numbers look kind of weird, then if you see right here at the top, there's a reset to default button. You can click that and it'll just put everything back on the page how it was originally. I keep mine filtered so the urban mobility projects aren't on there, just so we can see kind of like a general view of what the 5 regions are doing, because we know that the urban mobility office should be pretty much outsourcing everything, so it kind of inflates our numbers in general. So that's this one. The other one I talked about at the last PDQ and is where I want to spend a little bit more time. So I will get to that in a moment because I want to talk first about this guy. So I've been asked a few times for some way to have a list online of projects that may or may not apply to certain reports. And a good example of this is Jim Gerard and Pablo's group. He has a list of projects that for whatever reason, they are out of order as far as their milestone dates are. But he's like connected with the project manager already. He knows that there's a reason for it, because every project is its own individual beast and things are often not in the order that would be expected in the milestone report. So he keeps a Word document. So when other people are looking at reports, there's no way for just any user to go and see if Jim already knows that that project shouldn't be applying to that report. So what we tried to do instead was create a form that is housed on the reports portal. If you want to access it, it's right here on the side. And the list of the projects that have been accepted are right here. So the important thing that I want to note first is that this isn't going to make your project not show on a report. but it is a place to go and make sure that you have somewhere to point to that says like, oh yeah, no, I know that that project's not going to appear correctly on that, but we've talked and like it's fine. So this is what the list of the projects looks like right now. All that's on there is my test one to kind of show what information is there. Super basic: project key number, project name, the reason for the exception. So, and that's an open text field, so you can add in whatever comments you'd like. And then on the form that I'll show you in a moment, there's a drop-down menu to select reports that are on the reports portal already. So I just went through and checked off a bunch of them when I did the test one. So this is what the form looks like. It's very basic. Again, key number. This is actually the only field that's required on here. But if you aren't putting in anything else, then people aren't really going to understand why the key number is the only information there. And I gave some little examples. This is probably really small on your screen, but under the reason for exception box, I put in parentheses exempt from PDII, ADA project, etc. Because for, you know, like depending on when your project kicked off, it might not have applied to certain guidelines for PDII. ADA projects can have different exceptions. Alternative delivery is another good example here. And then this is that drop-down box, so you can select as many as you want on here. So on the news update for it, I gave a brief explanation of what that is, where to find it, who should use it, which this isn't an exhaustive list. If there's somebody, like if an area manager wants to go in and do that, like totally welcome. Anybody that can see our internal SharePoint pages can fill out that form. So it's not that limited. And then again, I noted that this isn't going to make your project drop off a report. It just provides a space for you to record a reason. So this was, I actually can't remember if I brought it to TPMPG. We might not have had room on the agenda for it, but this came out of the project delivery reports peer group. We talked about it there and kind of went through some different iterations and did some editing before I actually made it live on the portal. But I know that it's, you know, it's probably going to go through more iterations, and I don't know, somebody might decide we don't even need it at some point, but just feel free to send me any feedback, questions, suggestions you have for it, and we can discuss anything to change on there. Any questions about this so far before I move on? Cool. So the other thing I wanted to discuss is this project delivery report highlights. So I had this idea to try and help users engage a little bit more with reports and know what's available and what they're for. And what I'm planning to do is have a report highlight each month of a report that I think is either being underutilized or that people might not know is there, because I can see the amount of times people open reports and which pages of them they access. So I'll be basing it on that, and then also things like what this month is about, which is just the need to be good business partners for our procurement team. Melissa presented this morning on the notice to proceed time. This is a report that came out of the A&E audit. We were told that basically the procurement team needs a tool to be able to know what their workload's going to be at any given time. So basically this report uses, and this is actually the live view of the report. It's really small, but there's a link right below that'll take you to it. But this report uses your Microsoft Project Schedule data to basically provide a timeline of when the procurement office should be expecting documents. And it bases those things off of a few fields that pull your project into the report. And at the last PDQ, I presented on the two new fields that are in project schedules. Those are Oh, actually, we don't even have them in the report. They're filters that bring the projects into the report. It's the two that say outsourced portion of project is going through OPO. And what we're seeing is that there haven't been a ton of schedules republished with this information selected. So first and foremost, if you hear anything from me today, I really need everybody to go in and republish their schedules with this information updated. And the other thing is that I did see some projects that are administered through local CERT and local SFLP that say yes for going through the procurement office. And talking with Justin Burnt, he said that that's likely not the case. So if you have projects that are administered through local SFLP and local certification, please just go through and double check on your schedule that field is correct. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to point out is just these are all of the projects that are being pulled into the report so far. And we know that a lot more that are on our portfolio are going to be outsourced through the procurement office. So we're pretty confident that we don't have the full list here. And the usefulness of this report is only going to be as good as we are at having those fields inputted correctly. And that's how we're going to be better business partners for the procurement office. So I included the instructions for updating your schedule on the news post. So those are in here again. They're really accessible. I'm actually going to put the link for this news post in the chat so everybody can see it there. And the last part of the news update that I wanted to talk about is also a really minor change just to project delivery reports and kind of some definitions around it in general. The actual post, I provided some background, but basically when the Data and Reporting Task Force initially defined what a curated report was, we said that the data needed to be sourced solely from the project delivery cube. Which just isn't sufficient for a lot of the information that you guys need from reports or mostly like STIP data and some specific things around that. So we changed the definition to now say that reports need to be sourced from EDW sources. So basically that's going to be everything that we have in the data warehouse, which should be pretty clean cut. So I know I kind of bounced around. Which link do you not have access to, Anna? I may have goofed on something.
The one you put in the chat.
Oh, weird.
It says you have to request access.
That's strange. I will talk to our communications team about that and see if I didn't share it correctly. I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Adrian. Are there any other questions? I know I jumped around quite a bit, but even more interesting. It is working for some people. Well, with that, I will give it back to you then, Kim. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Haley.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so next up on the agenda is Nicole Frankel. Thanks for joining us, Nicole. I know you're out of the office, so appreciate you joining us while you're out. And she's going to talk about the right-of-way, no, the rail I called it the wrong thing, the rail certification form bulletin.
Thanks, Kim. I would turn on my camera, say hi real quick, and then I'm going to turn it off because I am out of the office. And I said I'd come in and present real quick. I don't have anything to share. I just wanted to mention to everybody real quickly that we have, to follow up from the ProjectWise email that I sent out a couple weeks ago. We have separated the railroad certification, and I am starting the process of submitting the railroad certs to the PMO office when the projects go to the PS&E. So we're in a transition with the railroad certs, but we're trying to cover that as best as we can. And I'll go through the steps what we did was we separated the utility cert from the railroad cert, because the utility piece was on the bottom of the utility cert, and that was done for two reasons, because the RESs or the utility coordinators were not the ones handling the railroad piece, and I was the one giving them the information to fill out that part of the cert. And we also separated it and had conversations with PMO to start the railroad certification process early. So part of that is we are going to start filling out, or the SURL role is going to start filling out the railroad cert at DAP. So that will give the SURL or the team the process to look at projects and make sure we understand the railroad involvement within a project early. And that will help us to get ahead of what agreements are needed or what planning process needs to take place. And then we can take that project information to the railroad and make sure that we have everything communicated correctly and we're following the right process. So when I receive, or the SURL role receives the plans at DAP, we'll look at those plans, we'll start filling out the cert, and then that railroad cert will be posted on the railroad folder in ProjectWise, as stated in my email. And then as the project develops, I'll work with the project manager to get railroad agreements or whatever railroad coordination needs to take place completed, and stay in contact with PMs if we initially determined that there was no railroad involvement, but say the scope of the project changed, and then there is railroad involvement, I can work with the PM and pick up that process as well. And then when we get to PS&E, I will fill out the final railroad cert, sign it, and put it in the PS&E folder. So with this change in process, I really tried to do this in the SURL takes on this role, or the railroad team takes on that role. And we can initiate that conversation earlier with the project managers. We were trying to take off a load from the coordinators, the RESs, and from utility coordinators, because that wasn't a piece that they were ever responsible for. And when we started this process, we also looked at what would need to be changed and how that would change the roles within the RESs and everybody else, and they agreed on that process. What we're hoping is with this change in process that we can get ahead of railroad agreements, and that we can not be waiting until the 11th hour to get agreements signed and approved and having delays in construction. I did work with Justin and Chris to do a memo. So once we finalize the memo, when I'm back in the office, I'll work with them and post that memo. And then within that memo, we noted all the documents that need to be changed or edited. And then we'll be working on those changes when I'm back in the office. The biggest thing with this change in process, again, is bulletin. Thanks, Justin. I'm on vacation. Is that we start communication early and often, and that everybody understands the process that the railroad goes through. So I know that's a short snippet. It's a very short summary. If anybody has any questions, I'll answer them, but just know that in this transition period, project managers have been emailing me to post the railroad cert, and I've been doing that. And we will just work through the transition and get it figured out. Does anybody have any questions? I know I went through that really quickly.
It doesn't look like there's any questions.
I was going to say, I don't think I presented that the most. Maybe I presented a lot better than I thought.
Let me expand on it just a little bit further, Nicole, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So in the bulletin, there is also reference to the other documents that are also being changed or will be reflective of the changes being made. So updating the PS&E and DAP checklists, ensuring that the updated guidance is actually descriptive about what the different roles and responsibilities, processes, deliverables, and requirements are in the associated manuals, such as the updated rail manual. There will be some modifications considering we're updating the PS&E and DEP checklist. There will be modifications to the phase gate and phase gate training manuals as needed. And all this is going to be put out for review, for comment, and et cetera. As Nicole was saying, the biggest purpose of this is to make sure that everything's being done as early as possible, to make sure that all the project delivery teams know what the requirements are and know who's going to be doing what. So making sure everyone knows that, as early as possible or around DAP, need to be communicating with Nicole's current position, the state utility rail liaison, making sure that her and whoever she delegates to has the opportunity to review plans, begin the process as early as possible. So as we get closer to PS&E, there's not that potential for delays and issues. Did I get that about right, Nicole?
Mm-hmm. And we're trying to solidify this process. So, you know, whatever happens when this rotation ends, that it's a solidified process and there's better communication.
Anybody have anything else for Nicole?
This is just a comment, Kim, to the team, just to clarify, just adding additional clarification. We'll be engaging the TP and PG group, the peer group, project managers peer group, and then also area managers before those changes get finalized, before we finalize the bulletin. So you'll get to weigh in and add comments and feedback before we finalize those changes.
Yes, and I want to echo that, Oscar, because the number one thing that I hear, if there's the biggest thing is the lack of communication and the lack of understanding. So I'm just trying to find ways to improve that. To Grant's question, how long does it take? Usually, I'll be honest, with Heather back, it usually only takes her about a half an hour or so to flip through things and look at the railroad piece of it. So it really doesn't take us all that long. It's not a huge workload. It's actually, it takes us a lot longer to look at the rail piece and the utility pieces later in the game than it does looking at them at DAP. Because when we do look at, we have a database, so then we can put all of this together and we can put it in our database and we can plan. So, how long the railroad? They are hitting, I think they've been hitting their timelines. They asked for up to, 90 days? Kristen, are you on? Not to put you on the spot, but I think it's 90 days to review the plans. And then when we look at plans earlier, we can put that in our schedule. Sorry, Kristen.
No, I was going to say it depends on the railroad, but most plan review is 45 to 60 days, with UP being the exception.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a great team, that's all. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. Have a great rest of your vacation.
Yes, so I'll be out for a couple of weeks, but don't hesitate to reach out and continue to give feedback. And if there's other processes we can improve on, both on the utilities and the rail side, let us know.
Thanks.
Have a great day. Bye.
Right. I just an FYI, I have turned my camera off because it keeps telling me I have poor network quality. So, and then I was supposed to call in, and last time that crashed everything. So I'm just laying low. And with that, I'm going to welcome Scott Shockley to talk about the transportation project management system work that he's been working on. Welcome, Scott. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. I will share my presentation. Okay, so hopefully you can see this presentation, and then hopefully Kim or somebody, if you could just check the chat, or if anybody has any questions, just let me know. I'm working off a laptop here. So I've been to PDQ and AMT a few times over the last year, discussing the transportation project management system and the progress that's been made. Today, I'm here to discuss the refined scope, schedule, and budget. Basically, this was a request that came in from IS. Originally, when we presented TPMS to IS and asking them their input on the direction with the viable solutions that were chosen by the systems requirements specifications team. They came back with some suggestions and a recommendation, and we'll get into that in a second. But basically what they said was, you're only bringing initial scope, schedule, and budget if you take this to the Tech and Data Council, which would be the next step, and we'll get to that as well. They're going to need to see the full TPMS system. So they requested that we actually refine the scope, schedule, and budget and actually put forth what we think TPMS will look like from beginning to end. So that's what this presentation is today. You should have a copy or a version of this. If I think, Kim, you posted this. So we're going to go through a lot of these slides you've seen before. So I'm going to kind of scan through them and just give you a friendly reminder of where we've been, but not focus on those slides. So about 20 of the slides, we're just going to kind of scan through, and then the rest of them will actually dive a little deeper to show you where we currently stand today. So background, we talked about the need for a transportation project management system, that there isn't a one-stop shop for project management data and project development. Data is entered and extracted from multiple sources with redundancy and rework. We've gone over the background slide a few times, but the stuff that's changed here is the last bullet here where we're talking about the short-term solution. All of these bullets have been updated just to say where we've been in the last year. And we can actually, I'll show you that when we get to the updated schedule slides as well. But down here, this is the focus. That the selected CPMS short-term solution, the core team and the sponsors have chosen with IS's recommendation, and the SRS recommendation is to move forward with Power Platform, and we'll get into the reasons why in a few minutes. And where we're at right now is identifying next steps with ODOT IS and then refining the scope, schedule, and budget based on this chosen solution. So as you have a copy of this with the main issues that was located in the RFI that went out to consultants, talking about our initial strategy and how we were going to take a two-pronged approach of trying to take on a short-term solution to meet immediate user needs and working towards a long-term solution with the consultant assessment of data and system architecture. These were all the main issues that were identified in the RFI, like no single point of data entry, duplication of efforts, manual data updates, no clear source of truth for all data. There's some systemless data that's not currently in the software, et cetera, et cetera. We went out with what was recommended was to make sure that we actually reached out to all the users, which we consider primary users as the TPMs, the RECPs, and the area managers. We did go out with a survey earlier this year just to make sure that the user needs sub-team that identified specific user needs, we wanted to confirm that those needs were accurate. So these next few slides actually show the results of the user needs survey. We've gone through these before, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just note that there are notes in the notes section. And I will note that back in slide 1, there is a table of contents at the bottom of the slide in the notes section. So when you open this up, if you're looking for specific information, table of contents is down there. So we did get a 61% response rate. We did get representation from all regions and all roles. The meat of it, though, that we got out of this was the actual business need, the rework, redundancies, and inefficiencies, where we're actually showing that it's anywhere between 5% to 20% of an FTE's time. Again, it's all TPMs, all RECPs, and all AMs around the state, which could be as at the bare minimum could be about $550,000 in cost savings if we do implement a solution. Noting in the notes down here that it's not $550,000 cost savings, it's the FTE that we would actually be saving. So 5% of everybody's time could be dedicated to something else. So there is a benefit slide here, one source of truth, increased efficiency and productivity, et cetera. And then we go into the actual user needs, the efficiencies here, project management functions, data and reporting, and ease of use. And everything that the user needs sub-team actually put forth came back and was confirmed. So all of this red and orange means that it is a must-have or like to have. If we see the blues, the light blues and the dark blues, those are the don't knows and not considered a business need or a user need. So everything was confirmed from the survey from all roles that participated. This was actually brought back to the SRS sub-team, the systems requirement sub-team, and all the sub-teams are located on the last slide on questions. So we'll get to that at the end of the presentation on who's actually participated in these sub-teams. But there was 3 viable solutions that were put forth to the core team. There was a smart sheet, there's Power Platform and Ashtoware project. The SRS team actually went through and just made sure that all 3 were the viability of all 3. They wanted to do a comparison of all the user needs and the system requirement specifications that were identified by both sub teams. So these next few slides, you're actually going to see that they actually went through with all the user needs and actually said these 3 viable solutions, what could they actually do for us and meeting those user needs. I do have down here, and we'll get to it on the chosen solution as well, the percent of user needs met by solution. Smartsheet would meet 93% of user needs that have been identified to date, 96% for Power Platform, and 89% for Ashtoware. So that's where you actually see these yellows here, 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 and here. That's where those percentages come from. The core team did come back and say, we're seeing a lot of green across the board, so how are we actually supposed to make a decision on this? Informed decision. So we went back and we actually worked with the SRS team to come up with some similarities and differences. And I covered this at the last PDQ, so we're not really going to go through all of these, but if you would like to see what the differences are, and they're minor differences, they're located down here and with further description of all this. So they're very minor differences between the 3 platforms or 3 viable solutions. We also went through and discussed development and how we could actually develop TPMS based on the resources currently available, noting that IS is strongly recommending, and I don't think it's a recommendation, I think we have to actually have an IS person or resource on the project to move forward. But we will find out when we move this forward to Tech and Data Council. But IS is saying that we should have somebody that is an IS resource on the project to make sure that we are following, as we're building this system and the solution, following IS policy, procedure, best practices, and lessons learned. So new slide, this is brand new, slide 20 is the chosen solution. So as I said earlier, the chosen solution is Power Platform. Power Platform does meet most user needs, which is 96%. Power Platform and Microsoft Project Online are using the same database in the background. And ODOT may be moving forward with MS Project Online. I haven't heard an update on that, but as far as the last time I heard, we may be moving forward with that. And if that is still true, we are considering being able to, in the future, link up the project schedule data in with the Power Platform TPMS system. We also noted that the state uses Microsoft products, so the Power Platform licenses are already available for all state employees. They're included in the Microsoft packaging for all state licensing, and we have the potential to add on for Power Platform developers. The SRS found minor differences between the viable solutions. Again, that's this differences slide right here. So no matter what the solution is that we move forward with, they're very minor minor differences there. And then ODOT IS, we actually went back to them and asked their input, noting that we're looking for hopefully something that is a short-term solution that could potentially be a long-term solution. And they agreed with what the SRS team came up with and said that Power Platform is probably our best direction moving forward in the long term. They asked us to refine the scope, schedule, and budget, and that's what I'm here to present today. So the initial scope was for TPMS was presented earlier this year to PDQ and AMT. It just included a few of the deliverables that are located on the milestone and deliverables document that's on the project delivery portal. And these are TPM, these are considered TPM and RECP deliverables. There's 167 that were actually listed. So we have the TPMS numbering 1 through 167, and then there is a numbering system in the next refined scope that you'll see in a second. We went through and I worked with Grant Matlock on this to estimate the hours and the complexity for developing these in the TPMS system for that chosen solution at the time. Again, this is just initial scope. We went back based on IS's recommendation, and Grant and I went through that list again, and we determined out of the 167, at least 80 deliverables now in total that would move forward in TPMS. And we have that listed here on the next 4 slides. You'll see that they're broken out into 4 cycles. First cycle, including 29 deliverables, and it would be 900 hours for development, based on the same scale of estimated time for development and complexity for each of these deliverables that are listed. And we do go from milestone scoping all the way through PS&E. So the first round that users would get or testers would get would include for TPMS all of these deliverables listed here. Second round, we have 16 deliverables and 300 hours. We're also noting at the bottom that once we hit the second cycle, the cycle will also include enhancements based on feedback from users from the previous cycles, and may also include that consultant assessment that's coming from the long-term solution. The third cycle is 17 deliverables and 510 hours for development, again, using the same estimated hours and complexity here for the specific deliverables listed here. And then the fourth round or fourth cycle that would complete the TPMS as we see it right now. Not saying we can't make future enhancements or adjustments. As business changes, we recognize that TPMS will have to change as well. But this would be the fourth round and 18 deliverables and 390 hours. So this is all based off of refined scope, which was requested by IS before we actually take this to tech and data to get approval to move forward with this as a project. We did bring to you the last time, or I brought it to you last time, the initial scope cost, which was bringing in the cost of Smartsheet, Power Platform, and Ashtoware. Again, all the oranges that you'll see, the slides, this was just based off initial scope. So these select few deliverables that would have been the initial scope originally was considered, this was the cost for developing those deliverables, plus 5 years of system administration and maintenance. The updated cost value now has jumped a little bit because we've added all 4 cycles here. So we do have all 4 cycles and all the development hours, plus a contingency here of 25%. So we're looking anywhere between 1.3 and 1.6 million. We're still refining this right now. I noted something with Grant the other day as we were working through this, that we based everything off of a year in initial schedule, and now, or based off of the schedule that initially was a year for development, and now we're looking at about 18 months. So there's some minor modifications that need to be made here. So you may see some of these numbers jump slightly, but it's not much. We have the initial strategy schedule here that was brought to these teams as well, AMT and PDQ before. This is just showing a high level for a 10-year span, what it looks like for the long-term solution and the short-term solution. This has been brought to this team before, but again, this is what was actually presented in the RFI to consultants for them to actually provide feedback on. We also had an evolution of the transportation project management system. We were originally going to start with this initial scope, which was a phased implementation to meet immediate user needs. So again, back to that orange slide with initial scope, this was actually going to start us off. Then we were going to have the consultant assessment and user feedback help us enhance that short-term solution until we actually had the long-term solution ready to deploy. The RFI responses have come back, and we do have a slide on this as well. It's slide 30 in the presentation. And basically, we had 4 consultants come in and give us a response saying that they all agree with ODOT strategy. They think it's feasible with the 2-prong approach. But they did come back with some recommendations, such as using an agile methodology. It would help minimize risk. It would bring value quicker. They're asking us to think about sprints or epics based on requirements gathering and customer needs and user stories. And that's kind of what we did with the first or the 4 cycles, is starting to develop those cycles based on immediate need for the users. First cycle being the main needs to get that launched, and then prioritize those epics based on immediate needs. And I think that we've gone back, and as we refine the scope, we've actually met that. And then they also said that we should try to shoot for a short-term solution that could be a long-term solution, so that we don't actually impact business later on. If there is a way to actually implement and develop the short-term, a long-term solution in the short term that we currently have access to, all the better. So then we don't have to make that pivot, and we don't have to redevelop the system later on. So that was another key factor when we went back and talked to IS about the 3 viable solutions of Smartsheet, Power Platform, and Ashtoware. We were having that conversation about what potentially could be that long-term solution. And again, that chosen solution slide that I shared earlier are the reasons why we went with Power Platform. There are other insights down here, such as Adobe Workfront actually recommended that we think about having at least 2 to 3 system administrators. Some of this is about cross-training and just making sure that we always have somebody that can be a backup, or just noting the workload when business need or the system goes, if the system goes down, or any troubleshooting, any issues, that we have somebody there. The person's not just on vacation or they've left the job role for any reason. That we've also heard back that we should conduct an IT maturity assessment. Data governance is key, and that's being worked in right now as well, and you'll see that in the schedule. Customer-focused solution, which I think that we've actually done pretty well with the user needs survey, and we do have the user needs sub-team that we'll get to in a minute on the last slide, that we've asked to stay on for user testing and as subject matter experts when we do start developing the solution. Benchmarking was seen as a heavy lift by the consultants, and they were actually saying that we would get minimal reward from that. They're just advocating for looking for best practices and lessons learned, and not actually benchmarking. And then documenting everything is key here, and we've heard that from our internal IS as well, as making sure that we document the system as it's being developed, so that the system administrator knows how the system was developed, and that can actually be, if any changes need to be made, they can actually administer the work. ODOT has access to 2 viable solutions. So Workfront even came back and said, they thought that they were, the leader right now externally, but they did note when they were showing the comparisons of other other products out there on the market, they did note that Power Platform and Smartsheets were out there as leaders as well. So we do have access to Power Platform and Smartsheet right now. So we just put that bullet here, just noting that it's not that far behind based on what Workfront actually offers, which is something we do not have access to. And then 2 separate solutions. This was noted by our core team as well, but and our SRS team and IS as well. But Slalom came back and said that 2 separate solutions could have resource constraints, redundancies, and stakeholder frustrations when you try to make that pivot from short-term to long-term solution. We get to slide 31, and I'm noting the time. I have about 10 minutes left. We looked at initial scope and development schedule. This is what we are aiming for the last year, July through June of 21 to 22. We were trying to aim for actually starting development with TPMS, but noting that I'll actually show you what we actually were able to accomplish We did develop and present a proof of concept. This was something that Grant Matlock was working on. This was the Smartsheet prototype. It was presented to the core team. At that time, we didn't want to just jump to one solution. The core team asked it to form sub-teams, the SRS team and the user needs sub-team, to better understand user needs and to understand if there's any other products out there that we may have access to that may be a viable solution, and the justification for moving forward and making an informed decision. So we did all of that. We identified the system's requirements. We identified the user needs. We even went out with a survey to all users and asked them to confirm user needs. We drafted that scope of work, which was initial scope, identified the viable solutions, which was Smartsheet, Power Platform, and Ashtoware, and then identified the similarities and viable solutions, which is we've already gone over those slides. Discussed the viable solutions with IS, and then get a decision from the core team and sponsors on that short-term solution, which David and Tamara did say Power Platform is what we'd move forward with. So we are down here in hitting June, and we identified next steps with IS, and we refined the scope, schedule, and budget. The refined schedule, which is based off of the refined scope, is down here, and there are a lot of notes down here. This actually pertains to what's in the green box here. So as I've presented this schedule before, this is aggressive schedule. This is based on if everything goes right. And what I mean by everything goes right is that everything in this green box actually happens. We get all the approvals that we need. The project is prioritized. We get an IS resource is available. Governance has been developed. We are able to find an internal developer. We have that developer is full-time. And then the developers have been trained on Power Platform and have the KSAs. We are granted access to the tool, and then we do have the developers' licenses acquired. And that's all supposed to be happening right now between July and December. As of right now, we're vetting the solution, which I'm doing here with PDQ, or at PDQ, with scope, schedule, and budget with stakeholders. We're going to gain approvals from the Tech and Data Council and potentially with DAS EIS if needed. Developing the solution governance is something that IS is working on this summer, and they said that they should be done by September for Power Platform. Identifying developer resources. There is a meeting that has been set up for next week that we are going to start discussing resource planning, what resources we currently have and what resources we will need to move forward to meet this schedule. Wireframing and gathering requirements. We've actually started wireframing. We worked with Amber Marcus and IS to draft wireframing, and we are still working with IS on that. Gathering requirements, we have started with that as well, and breaking down the 80 documents and determining what fields are needed, what source systems are pulled from. Is it going to be data entry, et cetera, and then starting to map that out and what those process workflows look like. We are looking at developer training right now as well, because Power Platform is pretty new. And then making sure that we get granted access to the solution, and IS is saying that will happen sometime between September and December. We get down into the develop first cycle, January 1st. If all goes well, again, everything is green. We would start development of the first cycle, which was the slide originally, the 900 hours and 29 deliverables. Confirm those gathering requirements that was back here, start developing the prototype. User testing would happen hopefully with the user needs sub-team. And then we would start deploying and training sometime around this time next year. We do have the other two, or the other three listed here as well: develop cycle 2, develop cycle 3, and develop cycle 4. And hopefully having all of TPMS, again, aggressive schedule, optimistic schedule, if everything goes right, completed by June of 2024, based on the refined scope. Now, that's based off of an internal developer. I've actually created a second second schedule that's based off of external development, meaning that we couldn't find an internal developer to actually work full time and meet that schedule to get TPMS out to our users. And this schedule is basically the same exact schedule. It just adds or pads the timing by 1 year to develop the RFP to acquire the developer. So that's what you'll see is the main difference here. And then I'm using this box thing again. It's just in orange, and it's basically just, and notes are down here again saying that IS resource isn't available. External development is needed. The access to the tool is delayed for some reason. Developer licenses delayed for some reason, and any reason that we may not see at this point in time, if there's a reason that we need to switch to the solution to another solution such as Smartsheet because Power Platform is unable to actually meet a specific need, then this schedule is actually out there just as kind of a worst case scenario, which actually puts us development, fourth cycle, and getting into maintenance and operations and system admin sometime around June of 2025. So we're looking at either June of 2024 or June of 2025 is currently what we're looking at with these two schedules. And again, they're just draft. This is what we're looking at least presenting to Tech and Data Council and saying that we've refined the TPMS scope, schedule, and budget. And now we're just looking for feedback and how to move forward. TPMS next steps. I do have a few things down here. The TPMS core team is going to continue working on the long-term solution, continuing to discuss the responses from the RFI for the long-term solution and incorporate any feedback and suggestions into the RFP that's currently being worked by OPO. The short-term solution, which is what we've been discussing throughout this presentation, the core team is going to continue to review and modify the refined scope, schedule, and budget as needed. We have another meeting set up next week. We have two scenarios, again, as I just presented with those schedules, internal versus external development. We do have a meeting set up next week as well for resource planning and to discuss what resources do we currently have available and what we may actually need. And that may flush out which schedule we're actually leaning towards. And then we are noting that a lot of this is dependent on ODOT IS governance of Power Platform and making sure that we get access to the tool and they allow us and divisions to actually develop and administer Power Platform products. So that should be happening this summer with confirmation coming at least by September of this year. The TPMS sponsors, they are going to, they're signed approving the short-term solution, refined scope, schedule, and budget. And they've already seen this. We met last week to discuss it and then start obtaining resources from that resource plan that's going to be developed or drafted next week, obtaining resources, funding, developers, system admins for TPMS short-term solution. ODOT IS, they've said that they would be establishing the governance for Power Platform this summer, assisting with next steps, identifying IS approvals such as Tech and Data Council and DASI IS as needed, and then determining if there's any procurement that's needed, such as additional software licenses or add-on needs for this chosen solution. So this is technically where we're headed right now and next steps. We are still moving this ball downfield and chipping away at this project. And I would like to, again, like I've done previously, thank everybody that's been involved in this project. And I know I'm missing names from this slide, and this is probably the slide I need to update. And I apologize if your name is not listed on here, but there's a ton of people that have had spent a lot of time on this project, and I really appreciate all the input and feedback that's been put into this so far. That said, I'm at time. So I'm not sure if we have any time for Q&A or if there was any questions or anything in the chat, or if I just talked too much or if my mic was off the whole time.
There's nothing in the chat or no raised hands. Does anybody have any comments, questions? Okay. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Oscar, did you have anything that you wanted to add? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know that you've been, trying to push for this project and getting this out to our stakeholders, the TPMs, RECPs, and AMs as soon as possible.
Thank you, Scott. I mean, first is thanks to you. I know this is a lot of work in the coordination with the regions, and you can tell this is a lot of work here. Engaging stakeholder will be a very key point here to make sure we're having a system that actually can be utilized by the users. I have a comment on the resources. That is something that we're working on right now. We've got two parts. One is IES, like Scott said, and then we have our own resources that we have to identify. I'm working on that right now. Pablo and I will be discussing when we can have a position to actually oversee this as a system. We can have a system in place as soon as we can. Like Scott said, September, December timeframe is when we can have our platform actually being utilized by our agency. So still working on the resources and getting resources ready to support us. That's a key part right now. I think the user requirement, the business need, and all that stuff has been covered. Now what is pending is resources, and that's something we're working on. Again, if you have any additional feedback, I know some of you are familiar with Power Platform. This is new to us. If you have used it before or you have some experience, please share your feedback with us, share your experience with us. That way we can have a good system that can actually be utilized by the team. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, PDQ. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, needs, concern, feedback, please reach out to me. Again, this project is for everybody that's on this call right now. So this system is, we're trying to get this system out into your hands as soon as possible. Thank you.
And just one last comment now that you're talking about it, Scott. I think speaking of the schedule, I know this is, like you said, you put it very clear. Seems to be very optimistic and an aggressive schedule. So again, maybe come October, we may end up having a different schedule. And as we have been discussing, we have two solutions now. There's one we're calling long-term solution and another one as a short-term solution. Come October, depending on how we see the responses for this RFI that we have received so far, we may end up having a short-term solution as the long-term solution. So keep we'll keep updating you, but things may change depending on how things play out as we move forward. This is an aggressive schedule, trying to be very optimistic. Hopefully we get to meet the target by 2024, have something in place, but at least by the end of this year, we should get some stuff going, get some momentum going with actual implementation.
There is a question in the chat, Scott. What is the list of 80 documents being looked at for use initially in TPMS?
It's in the.
Sorry, I've got to get the mute off. Oscar, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, it's on one of the slides, Scott. If you can share the PowerPoint after this meeting, if it has not been shared yet, but it's on one of the PowerPoints. Yeah, it's all the documents that we have listed from scoping all the way to bid opening. So that is the scope so far. A couple of documents will be used after scoping. But again, it's all the documents from scoping all the way to bid opening. And those documents that actually apply to project managers, because we've got so many, some of them are technical services staff. So we'll be trying to see how we can integrate the systems between us, project managers, and the technical side. But other than that, it's all the documents that apply to the project managers. If you look at the QC plan for project management, all those documents listed is what we'll be looking at as a scope.
And just to add on to that, it came from the statewide milestone document that has been on the project delivery portal. We recognize that may need to be updated, but as of right now, the initial scope and the refined scope were based off the 167 deliverables that were listed in there from scoping all the way through PS&E, determined based off of the deliverables for TPMs and RECPs. And Grant and I just went through there and identified the various deliverables that should be a part of TPMS. So, and we recognize that it's probably, like, I usually go with an 80-20 rule, 80% correct, 20% refinement. I would say Grant and I have got it down to like 95% correct and 5% refinement. So we will continue to refine them or refine what is in TPMS as we continue to move forward with this, but we do need to keep moving forward with it.
And just to make a comment, I'm already getting messages now. We have some experts that are familiar with Power Platform. Please reach out as much as you can. We need that help as we try to identify resources that can help us with implementing this system. So thank you.
Can you, Oscar, will you send those resources my way? Because I'm drafting the resource plan right now, and we can at least put them in the bank of resource that potentially could be available.
Thank you. Let's discuss.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Sorry for taking 5 more minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. So up next is Chris Scott and Tana Libby and myself, and we are going to talk about the project delivery change management process. Tana
Thanks,
and
Kim.
Chris? Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Kim. Good morning, everyone. So Tana dropped a spoiler alert during her excellent training update earlier. She mentioned the formation of the new change advisory board as part of the continuous improvement work that we're doing around the existing change management process. So a little background first. Tana kind of alluded to it in that the PMO has heard some feedback for quite some time now. I don't think that's a secret to a lot of people around the realm of change. The rate of change is too fast. It's difficult, impossible, really, even to keep up with the changing guidance, processes, extra steps that folks are being asked to adhere to, follow, what have you. And furthermore, we're hearing an overwhelming plea just to include our people in the regions in the process of implementing changes that impact them, or rather impact you, really. So enter the Change Advisory Board, or CAB as we're calling it. Now, Change Advisory, this might be a familiar concept, especially if you've been doing project management for a while. I had the chance in DHS and OHA when I was an IT PM to see it in action. Just call it the Illuminati of change. Except maybe our group is a little easier to join and will be far more transparent and communicative about the inner workings of it. In fact, what we're proposing is that we pull our membership from each of the regions. So maybe it's more like a Knights of the Round Table of change. Each region will have equal voice when identifying and determining changes. What changes, when, how they're implemented, or even if a change needs to get made at all. What we're looking for is a TPM and an RACP from each region, and a backup, just in case, so people can go on vacation once in a while. Each region also, we would pull a tech center rep, and we're hoping to woo an area manager for kind of a broader perspective. And then finally, Justin Burnt and myself from the PMO. So 13 total members, as you can see on the slide. Kind of give it that odd number because there will be, when we're going through and determining and evaluating changes, we can, we don't have a stalemate, so to speak. The overall goal of CAB will be to serve as the primary intermediary step on the road to approval at the STIP portfolio management team. And we really want to focus on bringing the right stakeholders to the table to ensure that all feedback is being considered. We're looking for more efficient, intentional, and inclusive, or we're looking to be more intentional and inclusive with our approach to change, with the intended outcome of slowing the flow, which hopefully will alleviate the change fatigue that we're hearing about. So we've heard you around that, and this is the proposal to assist with that. So as I mentioned, communication will be a key part of this as well. So by having your involvement at the CAB level, each of the regions will have an equal skin in the game and be able to go back to the regions to not only communicate, I mean, we'll have official communications that go out, but by having that representation at each CAB meeting, you'll have your voice there and be able to relay that back to your regions so that that representation is being made at the CAB. So when the CAB thoroughly vets a new change initiative, we'll decide as a group what those next steps are, and whether it's recommending approval and implementation, or when an initiative needs to cook a little longer or go back to the drawing board entirely. Keyword in there is advisory. So this is we're not looking to take any authority from the STIP portfolio management team as it is currently. So it's just in augmenting the existing change management process to give that confidence that when we elevate a change up to them, they can the STIP team can be confident that the vetting has been done and it's included the right perspectives and the right feedback from all angles, from across the disciplines, from project managers in each region. So with that said, the current change management team is looking for feedback on this approach. And more importantly, we're trying to recruit. Currently, it's just me and Justin, which is kind of lonely. I think everybody would agree that having the two of us handle and decide stuff on our own is probably not the most efficient thing. Well, it might be efficient, it just might not be the right thing. So, so please, if you're passionate about change, or even just tired of the current process and want to be involved in this solution, reach out to us. We recognize that this commitment could be a discussion or should be a discussion among the regions at your regular region check-ins or what have you. And I know factors come into play as well, such as availability, lack of resources, having a backup, et cetera. So having that that representation will be crucial for making sure that this is successful. And eventually, we'd love to just get to a spot where changes are made only when necessary.
Chris, Bill brought up, how is this different than TPM-PG?
Well, let's clarify that to the STIP portfolio management peer group.
Oh.
Or Bill can clarify.
Bill? Bill, I couldn't hear you.
I think he's referring to the STIP portfolio management team. Is that right, Bill? We can hear you.
It's the TPM group that meets every month.
The TPM group that meets every month?
Yeah, it's statewide TPM peer group.
Okay, so how is the CAB different from all the groups?
Okay, so I think I heard it's still very faint, but how does the CAB differ from the TPM peer group that meets every month? So, okay. That's a really good question. So, and Justin, were you about ready to weigh in on that? I think that the right people in the TPM peer group are there and would be a part of CAB. I think CAB is more intentional around the process of change and focus solely on change and the rate of change, where I think right now our process is to bring in a laundry list of changes and we go through them, and then we ask the TPM PEG to go away and make those determinations, or we talk about it, and sometimes we don't even get through the rate of changes or the sheer list of changes that are being discussed. So I think that CAB would be more intentionally focused on individual change initiatives. And Oscar, Justin, or Tana, please weigh in if or even the rest of the change management team. Adrian, if you're on.
No, thank you.
So Chris, if I might be able to jump in.
Yeah, please can.
You know, the TPM peer group, you know, I think is an important group for, you know, working issues that are specific to to the TPMs and the RECPs, you know, just around that project delivery, to be both a place to get information and to problem solve. And so I see that as a distinct group. What I like about the CAB is that when there's changes being proposed that are going to affect our work, that there's someone who's got time to actually dig into it, vet it, because I'll raise my hand and say I'm not the person that's going to always advocate for a lot of change. In fact, I think a lot of change needs a stronger business case, before we actually go upset the apple carts. But getting that input, from the group that you've got here, can actually kind of vet it, and I'll use a statewide template of, for statement of work. It's not a bad idea. I think there's just some things that probably, needed to get worked before it, kind of hit the light of day, and it was implemented. And I think this is that group that can provide that reality check that, hey, this isn't ready to go, or this isn't necessary, or we've already got that problem solved over here if people are aware of that. Or, maybe this they can put a more focused effort on that. And then, someone who sits on the statewide portfolio management team, that'll be one of the first questions that I would ask is, where's the CAB's, view on this? Is this something that is beneficial? Is it detrimental? Or is it something that needs, more vetting or refinement, but it has potential to be an improvement? So I don't think, the TPM group needs to go away or anything like that. But I think this is just that group of people that can focus on the change, and whether it's, change for change's sake, or if it's change that solves a problem, or something that needs a tweak. And I really like this idea. So thank you for your guys' efforts on this.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. That's and spot on, by the way. So yeah, I fully agree that CAB wouldn't be a replacement for that TPM PG. I think a good PMO, their role is to bring people to the table and coordinate the voices that are being there. But I think that, just applying, I think CAB applies that structure of getting these changes through the pipeline and getting them elevated. So maybe it's an intermediary step before TPM PG, where we can kind of rack them, pack them, and stack them for the TPMs to be fully thoughtful and evaluate changes that they know have been fully vetted at that point from a wide, from everybody involved in that change.
And also being able to take a change to the STIP portfolio management team for prioritization. So what are those changes that are needed immediately? What are those changes that are in need of additional vetting and whatnot per the recommendation of CAB? Or, okay, nope, this is something that is immediately ready to move forward. It's well thought out. Everyone believes it's vetted. Take that STIP portfolio, let them make the decision on, okay, what is the right time to actually move forward with a particular change. So several steps for the CAB in order to look at and see what the change is, what the validity of it is, make a recommendation to the STIP portfolio team, go out, do all of our engagement, our comment and feedback gathering to make sure that, yep, this is actually going to work and function. And then after all that change management process is completed, then move into implementation. Did I get that about right, Chris?
You're on mute, Chris.
Yeah. Chris, this is Kim. I also wanted to say really quick, following up to Adrian's comment, that the CAB is meant, the change between the existing TPMPG and the CAB is, the CAB will be fully open for anyone to come and to attend and listen and ask questions and discuss the changes. The members will be the only ones with recommended voting or voting rights for recommendation or not. And it'll be advertised, for lack of a better word, a couple weeks before CAB. So if you see a change coming up, then you can make sure to get that on your calendar if you can and come to the CAB. And then real quick, Molly Carey had a question about, since this is an advisory board, what weight will their recommendations have on the final decision? For example, what if the recommendation is no change to current process? just, I don't know if Chris, I mean, we could
Yeah,
all
I can
answer
speak.
it, but
I can speak.
yeah.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I think where we hope to get with this, by having all the perspectives at the table, and as we get the process going, I mean, recognizing there's going to be obstacles along the way, and it's going to take some time to get some traction around it. But ultimately, I mean, we're hearing the input that you want to be involved in the process. This is the opportunity, I think, to do that. And once we start putting change initiatives through the motion and making those kinds of determinations on it, people will see it as as effective, right? I mean, it's if we can do it efficiently and it does we get the expected outcome. It'll be the process. I mean, I'd love to hope. I'd love to get to the point where, you know, we're talking about changes and suddenly it's oh, did this go through CAB or did this go through the proper vetting?
And just to add to your explanation, Chris, again, thank you, Ken. I think that was a very good explanation on how we connect the two groups between the CAB and the STIP portfolio management team. The STIP portfolio management team is the one with the delegated authority to actually make final decisions. So the CAB is more of providing proposals, like Ken was saying. He's going to be asking the team, did you go through the CAB first before coming to the portfolio management team for a final decision? So whether it's a yes or no, we'll be taking all those proposals, keeping the STIP portfolio management team posted on what was recommended by the CAB. So the CAB basically will be providing recommendations back to the STIP portfolio management team. That's where we're going to get the final decision. We, like some of you recall, we formed this group back in 2020. The STIP portfolio management team is almost similar to the old PDOT. So they'll be making final decisions, but the CAB will be providing recommendations. Right now, we do not have a CAB, so recommendations are coming from a few of us, or sometimes we'll engage people and we take the recommendations back to the STIP portfolio management team. But once we have the CAB, then we'll have a team that actually will review every single change and provide proposals back to the portfolio management team. Now, we'll be taking those recommendations, whether it's on a monthly basis or quarterly, but every quarter we'll be discussing with the portfolio management team some of the changes, what's going on, updates, and then at the PDQ we'll be doing the same. We have a site that can be shared, that will be shared, and then you'll be able to see all those changes as we go. Actually, if you go to our change management site right now, you will see some of those changes that are going on right now.
That's our next slide.
Oh, sorry, I'm already done.
You're on it.
I was going to say something else and now I can't remember what it was.
So we can go back to the presentation, I guess. And
I'm trying. So
there you go.
Yeah, I think that AOL dial-up is kind of stuttering. So
yeah, I for some reason I'm getting network problems. Okay, so in the change management SharePoint site, it won't let me click it unless it's in.
oh, there it is. Okay, so I will be quiet now and I'll turn it over to Tana to talk about the SharePoint site.
Can you
So
see it?
No problem. So that's fine. So we'll have the website and it will be sent out in the notes that come out after this meeting. So you'll be able to get there. And there's just been a couple of updates to this site that show the CAB in it. So you can see the changes that have yet to go to the CAB, the changes that are pending CAB, and then the results of those things. Thanks for getting there, Kim. Sorry about those links. So then you can see, yeah, perfect. So then you can see those changes there at the bottom that reference the CAB. Excellent. And then we have the little drop down at the top where you can see all the changes there. So this is meant to be like a living document. So we know changes are coming, and then as we have changes, they're always going to be in flux. So this is a place where when you come back, it's going to look different. As you come back, there's going to be updates to these changes as we go along. So this should be a place where you could regularly come back for updates to your changes. So not a huge difference, not a lot of change, but this will be like your go-to place to see what's happening, what has changed, and then the status of everything.
And then there'll be links provided to go to an actual site that is specific to the change, and it'll have the change owner, and it will show the documents that were submitted for the CAB or for STIP PMT. It's kind of where our hope is you come here to this site to see all the changes going on, and then but to get in-depth information about each change, that each change will have its own site. And Tana and the team is going to help create kind of a template to help those who don't have a lot of experience in having sites, so we can have kind of a lot of the same information. And I know we're over time, but we wanted to talk about the website a little bit. Questions, comments?
Just to add additional clarification on the scope of this change management framework here. This is mainly focusing on project management like we discussed last time, because I know this is the second time we're bringing it to the PDQ. Last year we covered this, so this is an update. It's like applying change management to change management process. We're making improvements. And again, this is based on your feedback and comments. Continue to share that with us. But just to clarify, this is mainly focusing on project management, things that are impacting project managers. But that doesn't mean we won't be coordinating with ETSB, our technical engineering and technical services branch, the tech centers and the tech services managers to determine what's going on the other side and figure out if it's going to be impacting project managers. So if there will be any changes from that side that will be impacting project managers, we'll try as much as possible to coordinate and bring those changes back to the team. There are a couple of cases where we've had forms getting updated because of the changes over in ETSB, so we'll keep monitoring that and bring it back to this team.
And I would just like to say that I appreciate the feedback that we've gotten, especially recently, with people wondering why certain things were happening and it didn't feel like we were being maybe as communicative as we could, and we heard that. And please keep giving us the feedback, because as Chris said, we want to get to a place to say, okay, it's implemented and we're going to, cab's going, everything's going, but we know it's not going to be just take off and be smooth sailing 100% of the time. So please keep giving us feedback, because this is an answer to your concerns around too much change and not being involved in changes to the work that you do. Thanks, Tana. Thanks, Chris. Thank you to the whole team that's been working on this. And I hope to have the website totally up to date with current changes and where we're at by the middle of August. But we will then, and I'll send out notice, and I'll send out a link again, but go ahead and go, you can get there now. But we'll bring it back again, I believe, to give an update on how it's going. We're hopefully will have had a CAB meeting or two by October, and we can talk about how it's going.
It would be nice if we get volunteers. The sooner the better. That way we can at least have our first meeting, in August, where we've got a couple of changes that are in flight. Those ones too will be reviewed before we take them back to the STIP portfolio management team. So if we can get volunteers as soon as we can, that would be nice. I see, Robert, you already seem to show interest. So if you want to sign up, please do. The sooner we get more members, the better. Then we can have our first meeting and continue to have monthly meetings or as needed when we have changes. See, we got more volunteers, so thank you.
We're at the last agenda item of the day for the project development bulletin process. Another little teaser that Tana gave us earlier today about the bulletin process coming out. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Chris and Justin, and Oscar will back them up too. I know if they need it. Hello?
Did Chris leave?
No, I'm just having severe network, and my laptop is chugging. Like unmuting takes about 5 seconds. So if you Justin, if you have the ability to share the PDB, that would be great.
Yeah, 1 second.
Thank you.
You sent it to me yesterday.
Yeah, everything's just kind of a slideshow for me right now.
Okay. Chris, do you want to talk about it or do you want me to?
Yeah, feel free, Justin.
Okay. So everyone's aware of what a project delivery notice is that is typically signed by David Kim that covers all of project delivery all the way through construction. Well, through some discussions within PMO, PCO, and with other business partners across the agency, we saw a little bit of a need for something not quite to the extent of a project delivery notice. So we're not going to per se do a project delivery notice for any interim guidance or requirements for minor changes and other such things. We needed a mechanism in order to show that we do have a bulletin or a notice or something of sorts that does provide firm guidance, requirements, and policy pertaining to any kind of changes or improvements being worked on from a multitude of different areas. Of course, everything here is going to be project development section. So anything within coming out of PDS that does not need or require the use of a project delivery notice, we now have a mechanism in order to put out other policy requirements and guidance as it relates to project delivery or project development. So of course, this also means that we're going to be working with other folks across the agency, with OPO, with construction, with whomever we need to in order to ensure that we're able to put out any such guidance changes and policy related requirements. We have some basic purpose and background. So of course, we're using a project development bulletin in order to establish this process. So PDB 01 has already been sent out. It describes what the purpose and background is. It provides some basic overview and direction for what it is going to include, provides some basic definitions such as rescinding and validation, process for how we're going to go through initiation, development, review, as well as release or communication of these project development bulletins, as well as maintenance and rescinding and the different roles pertaining to who's approving and who's doing what pertaining to these bulletins. We are also providing a template for this bulletin to be used. So making sure that we're providing some instruction as to how we're putting this out, some purpose and background, overview and direction, what kind of processes or actions are required, and of course, making sure that we list any references pertinent to the particular bulletin coming out. So some examples of where this would be used would be like the statewide statement of work came out as a project development bulletin signed by both Tamara Clark and Melissa Canfield, as it was a joint effort between the project development office as well as OPO. Some other future bulletins that will be coming out would be stuff for the ODOT delivered local program or other updates or process improvements coming out, as I said before, that don't require the use of a project delivery notice, but would more fit within the project development section. So with that, do we have any questions or comments pertaining to this? And Tana, Chris, Oscar, if I missed anything, please come back and expand.
Yes,
So,
I think you covered it very well. So I don't think we have any, unless we get questions or comments from the team here, but I think you covered it very well. This is almost similar to the tech bulletins that I'm assuming all of us are familiar with. Now we're having our own project development bulletins. Instead of sending out memos, we're going to be sending out bulletins. I think Justin just corrected Nicole today when she was saying memo, and he's like, no, it's bulletin. So that's what's going to be going on moving forward. That way, at least we can keep records of what is being shared. Because as you can recall, some of you are not, I mean, we've been discussing CET, and when we start talking about a memo, sometimes people be like, when was that sent out? But when we have a bulletin, we can post it online and people can actually see it and keep track of what the policy is. And then once we revise it or we have a operational notice in place or we have an updated guidance, then we can resend the bulletin. So that's going to be the process. Some of them can get resended and then continue to use the operation notices or guidance that we have available. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I was just curious if like the statewide annual amendment that Jeff sends out every year, would that be an example of one of these bulletins?
I would. Go ahead, Oscar.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, yes, that annual STIP amendment to the requirements of such and being able to be efficient and consistent for that for year to year of what the requirement is, how that process is going to work. Yes, that sounds like a wonderful idea in order to use a bulletin in order to convey that message. That way we have something established as a firm policy or guidance. We can define that process. We can define the requirements, the specific deliverables, what is required, who needs to be providing it, and so on. I guess, Oscar, we need to add that to our list between Chris and I for some discussions with Jeff Flowers for the next annual STIP amendment.
Yes, and then the only uniqueness with that bulletin is that it's going to be changing probably every year because every time we have that annual STIP adjustment, it comes with additional instructions, new instructions sometimes. So probably will be an updated bulletin every time we have a STIP adjustment, unless we get to a point where there are no changes to the instructions on what gets done when we have the STIP adjustment. As you can recall, what we did last year is not the same as what we're doing this year. There's some of the instructions that got revised. So that will be happening. So even if we end up with a bulletin, then we'll be making some changes to the criteria and the instructions and what programs are impacted, what type of projects can be adjusted and all that. So, and another good utilization of this bulletin will be the CET. So as you go through these focus group meetings, by the time we get to the end, what's going to come out of that is the bulletin that we can share with the team. And then the operation notice will follow after that. Operation notices usually take more time because we have to send it out, stakeholder review, address all the comments and all that stuff. So bulletin, at least if we get the focus group to agree, bring it back to this team. Once you say yes, then we put it in place as a policy. So that takes less time compared to the operation notices and updating guidance and then the guidebook that we have. So the CET will be another item that we'll end up using the bulletin. So you'll see that template when it's done. That will be sent out probably after October PDQ or before that. Depends on how soon we get stuff done and how soon we get to agree on what gets done for the CET.
It also gives us an opportunity in order to put out immediate guidance or requirements that are not necessarily established within ODOT. So if something comes out of federal highway and we need to put something out quickly, this gives a vehicle to do so. That's not to say that we won't still go through a full formal review and engagement process. We will still do so. And we would still make any required changes or adjustments as needed per the engagement and review process.
Yeah.
But if federal highway or someone comes down and says, no, you shall do this, we want to make sure that we have a vehicle to be able to put that out, to provide at least some interim guidance and information out to all the project delivery teams. This gives us the ability to do that much more quickly than some of our other methods of putting out that guidance and policy.
All right, thank you. Any more questions or comments? So I really quick, we're now to NOAs. Does anybody have any NOAs they would like to discuss?
If nobody has anything, I have one or two minor items.
I suppose. No, just kidding. Just kidding, honestly. Go ahead. Doesn't look like anybody has anything.
Elizabeth, an NOA is a non-agenda or not on agenda item.
Oh, sorry.
So for the ODOT delivered local agency projects, there is going to be some guidance and policy coming out here shortly. So I've been to the TPMPG, the area manager, as well as STIP portfolio on several different matters, including the bid matrix, the bid date matrix for local agency projects, the project change request form, and the use of ProjectWise. So as these items are going to be moving forward, so these are each going to be taken to probably the first cab if I'm able to get on my own agenda with coordinating with Chris. I'm writing up some basic language in bulletin format at the moment in order to convey the needs, requirements, and the purpose of why we would move forward with such items. And so I will be sharing that hopefully over the next couple of months as those bulletins are able to be formally drafted and available for review and comment. Now, also to that, there is going to be a QA/QC program plan for the ODOT delivered local projects that is in process, that is currently being reviewed by the Tech Center managers and will be shortly sent off to the Tech Center peer group for their review. And at some point that over the next couple of months will be coming out to anyone here dealing with local agency projects also for review and comment. And then one last thing, the local agency manual is also being worked on, but that is looking at a much longer time frame of probably will not have a draft for review for at least 4 to 6 months, but it is in the works. So if anyone has recommendations or need of guidance on anything, let myself or Kim Sharshaft know, and we will be sure to include it in the manual for some kind of guidance or policy.
Great. Is that it?
That's it.
Thanks, Justin. Anybody think of an NOA or an item that's not on the agenda? Elizabeth's right. We have way too many acronyms. Okay, so then real quick, agenda build for next PDQ. I just real quick want to show you what I picked up today and excuse me, what I've already got people reaching out for the October agenda. So future agenda items, and I'm thinking for October, if there's interest, we'll invite Travis Brower or an economist to kind of what David was talking about, talk about the state of our budget, revenues, expenditures, plans on how we're going to get paid. I know you guys are on projects, not all of us do. Anyway, and then maybe have Matt come and share his presentation on the progress that's been made on House Bill 2017 and earmarks. We're waiting still for the PDI audit update and recommendations. They've finished the audit, and as I think most of you have heard, it's more geared towards how how did we do meeting the requirements of the PDII process? But we're hoping through that, recommendations will be in the final report that will lead us hopefully to answering some of our questions like we had around DAPPers before the audit happened. But so we're hoping that by October, they'll have that final recommendation published, and we will then have them come and talk to us. Want to talk about the statewide statement of work exceptions. We wanted to talk about it this month. However, Tamara's on vacation and she's kind of been the center of developing that and what that's going to look like. And then Christy Gladhill has a 20-minute statewide project delivery QA/QC program update. The rest are just things that have been there for a while. So go ahead, take a look at those. Any really speak to you, let me know. We are really hoping to, at next PDQ, have someone from our audience, a stakeholder, come and maybe share some tips or tricks or something that's worked for them. We kind of wanted to get to a place where we could have a sharing piece from you all. And then hopefully we can make that a little more so it doesn't always feel like we're just talking at you. I think that's about all I have, unless Oscar, did you have anything in closing or?
Just a few comments. I know Tana didn't mention first, Kim, going back to PDII audit. We got an update last week on Friday from our internal auditor.
Oh,
they're still reviewing, so he's going through that peer review. Other auditors are reviewing that, so we should have an update in October.
Okay.
Yeah, and like you said, it's more around compliance than what we were looking for, where to improve, and whether it's working or not working, whether PDII is helping us or not. So we'll wait to see the recommendations coming from that audit. That was just the initial update when what they gave us last time. So maybe the recommendations will get into the specific details on where to improve, what's working, what's not working, before we get to the PDII for the non-certified local agents projects, because I think that is pending so far. And most of you have already been asking since last year, when can we have PDII for this local agents project? And now we have Justin. That's something we're going to get into, but we want to see first recommendations from the previous PDII that we've already implemented. I wanted to touch on what Tana mentioned when she was presenting the onboarding packet. That's something she's working on. We also need volunteers there, and the mentorship program. Those are things that are very important for us. So we would like to get members. If you feel like you're interested, please reach out to Tana. Otherwise, we'll be reaching out to specific people. But if you're interested, please reach out to Tana so we can get the momentum going. And hopefully by the end of this year or at the next PDQ, we can provide another update. We're getting a new TPMs almost, every quarter. So it'd be nice to have all these things in place. When they come on board, we can give them the training needed. Other than that, I just wanted to thank all the presenters and those who participated today. I know it was a good agenda. I can see feedback in the chat. So thank you all who participated and presented. This was a good meeting. Thank you.
And thank you all for giving your time and participating. We've been hearing more and more that resources, not only do we have a lot of work to do, but we have resourcing issues because everyone's having problems hiring. So hang in there. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next quarter, if not before.
Thank you.
Thanks.